county, they're right on the
Water,
border.
I'm bottled now,
I think it's Delta
Oh,
County.
that's funny.
So
But
it
yeah,
turns out.
still, yeah.
Sorry, not Price.
Yeah, it is.
What is the northeast Wisconsin county?
Menominee, that's what it is.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
Oh, it's a.
it goes faster than
I know.
you
I
think.
tried to
No,
figure
Florence
out
is what I was
something
thinking.
to look at
Was it just
everybody.
kind of
It
steady?
is an
It
hour
was
and a
steady.
half.
There were a lot of people, I don't know,
Yeah,
Sean, you
that's-
mentioned your electricity was out. We had a
It's
lot
like
of
you,
people come and say that their electricity was
5
out till
minutes to get to
Thursday.
highway,
And,
you're just going straight down.
I got mine back on late Wednesday.
Did you? Oh, a
Well,
lot of
actually, it's
people
closer to
said
Green Bay
that,
than it is
that,
here. Like, it takes maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours to get down there.
Yeah.
Hard to get out.
But if I don't.
Super
It's
easy.
pretty, it's pretty.
Well, I have
Yeah,
a generator,
like
but I don't want to run it when I'm not there.
All the what?
Basement floor.
Oh.
That's,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's a
Well,
nice
I mean,
generator.
we got a
powerful
backup
house,
cell
I
phone
just,
installed sometime, was it November? Yeah,
I
September.
Just a start.
no, it's not that, it's, I had it wired to my box. It's a big, it's 11,500.
She's right across the street from the small hall.
So
I did put a
I
generator in.
wheel it out,
For
and I
that
had a long cord that I plugged into the back of my garage, and it was wired into my box.
Water creeping in, and creeping in, and
But
I wouldn't
it's
say
just
flood would be a
loud.
strong word, but
And it's
the
not
power
one of
came
those,
back on.
I didn't want to spend
There's
$7,000.
been times
Going
when
to do
she's
that, right.
gone down there.
I mean, I spent $1,250
Yeah, she's
for
about
the
time.
generator
Yeah,
and $100 for a guy to wire.
you're not gonna know.
So, and then I paid $200, I bought all the
Water is a
wire
funny
myself,
thing.
so
Very funny thing.
from $1,500, I got
Oh, I
that.
know what I was looking at too. So it's this.
I have
See
a
if this
copy.
thing.
Oh,
I don't think.
no, I have one.
Okay. Okay.
No, that's the new camera they put in, so you.
Not much, I mean, no, because, I remember when we were at the.
I don't think you could
facility,
see
we were to the town of
what's going
Menominee,
on.
And he said that WPS said that they lose $1 million a day when electricity is out in Menominee. So they don't care where anything else is, they make sure
Typically not.
Monadnock has.
Like if I turn a light off.
So we've never had a problem because we're always open on. I mean, it might go out, but for,
Ours flicker.
Sorry, that's me.
and they're all underground, where I think some people said they're not.
Where is that light?
Underground yet, where ours are all underground.
I'm just curious.
I'm gonna say from Mike comes off of this road.
I'll put up a chart that's really big. Will you see a chart or will they?
From Highway 70 down to where I'm at.
Yeah,
I mean, I thought.
it probably isn't gonna matter.
The trees were beautiful. I mean, they just looked like tinsel all over, but then they were so heavy that I we walked on 17th. Yeah. And there's a big tree that just totally went down the road.
That's how the other.
Several trees. Just at the top.
That's why I
You
was.
know, where you wouldn't expect the branches.
On those bags, good job.
I had off local descriptions, they bought it. I had 4 about it. Yeah, we were like 32. Now it's even more than that.
You made it?
Yes. I was rushing.
I had my dad.
Is Bart coming?
For some for me. I like knock on some doors. Yes.
Yeah, she was told she had to have the meeting.
Sure. I'm looking down. She's still on the board. Just farm, it's all farm land.
My day was saying that you swear at people.
I do that every day.
Swear.
That's fine. Better than my house. Yeah.
They can see you and they can hear you, and that's really what.
Okay, it's 4 o'clock. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Pack?
Hi.
Mr. Bortz? Mr. Shaw?
Here.
Mrs. Fink? Here. Mr. Justice? Mrs. Knoll? Here. Mrs. Schuman? Here. Mr. Peterson?
Here.
Mr. Unler?
Here. Agenda was properly posted. Thank you. Any public participation? Okay. All right, this is the committee of the whole meeting, and we will be reviewing, discussing any annual changes to standard contracts and letters, and changes to the compensation plan for the entire staff. So, Mr. Colvin?
Question. Seriously, moving forward, I went and had an opportunity to go through a lot of the standard contract language. I know a couple of questions. I do like that, especially for your administrative contracts, that everything is included in the one document. I am not a fan of links that could be changed at a later time. I also think it's important that when we send out letters of intent, especially for staff, teaching and certified staff, or teaching and non-certified staff, that the handbooks are in place as best possible. There are several references to handbook language, and I think it's more transparent and the current handbook update is in place, then go out the letters of intent so people can reference the current handbook. Changing the handbook after you send out your contracts kind of leads to other than that, I know you have a couple of questions or you can answer.
I only sent them to you.
Oh, okay.
I have several questions.
Sure.
Is this the time or is it
Yeah, I
going to
think
take
this-
up way too much time?
Can I'm just reviewing this from the board meeting, so those are all in the board meeting minutes, correct?
What is in the board minutes?
A lot of stuff.
Well, yeah, but I don't have an attachment, like you're talking about the standard contract and the letters of assignment and the letters of intent. I thought we had some of those in our regular board meeting after this. So
Right.
we're just
Yeah,
reviewing
for
in
approval.
advance, so not attached to this. Okay, because I got
They are in the
confused.
regular meeting, they were also in last month's.
Okay, I just wanted to, because I think I did have a question, but I have to get to them.
I don't think we got a couple and we can jump in.
Okay.
Contract language. I mean, what we're talking about the individual contracts,
Right.
these are contract templates that basically every administrator gets, every support gets.
Okay, so starting with the administrator contract, under fringe benefits, item D, we have 260 days, 230 days, 240 days, 222 days, and less than 220 days. I guess just to clean things up, my suggestion would be if you're signing a 220-day contract, can you remove or X out the other stuff that does not pertain to the person signing the contract, instead of leaving that all up in the air? Because if I'm sending a contract to Katie, and Katie, you're 260, her contract should be 260, not 230, 240, 220 or less. It should be specific to the person signing the contract. It's a suggestion.
Do you want to know why we don't do it that way, or?
Yeah, why
Like,
is it?
we don't do it that way, so that when Lisa goes to print, like, we can standardize the printing process and crank them out at one time. And she's not literally printing X different contracts. So if there's 10 of us, she has to print 10 different ones. She does a mail merge, all 10 come out at one time, done. And it perfectly aligns to, like, in the first section of your contract, it says how many days it is. So you know which one or which category you fall into. That's how it connects the dots and makes it a template so that we don't have literally 10 different contracts.
So we explain the concept of the mail merge, so we can.
Well, but you're talking 8 administrators, so that's not that big of a deal. You know, I'm not that I want to put more work on Lisa, but to get it right per administrator, I think is more important than the extra few minutes for 8 administrators.
I guess it wasn't confusing to me, and you guys hold them. Are they confusing? I don't know. It doesn't, like, yeah, in other districts, and your attorney recommended it, by the way.
I never heard her say that, so.
I'll tell you,
I don't know that.
all the things I brought to her last year that made it to you guys, like she is on board, she has seen it, it's not like from Eddie's closet or something, it's attorney reviewed, she is good with it, it's good rationale.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the wording, then the board shall pay a percentage, the board shall pay a percentage. Can't we put the board pays 10% so they know what we're actually paying?
The recommendation was to, again, have the board annually approve what those are, so you're not locked in for multiple years of that, or you lock in at some rate at some point, and then, for example, if that contract is rolling, and somebody says, no, I don't wanna change it, and I won't even sign the new contract that you wanna offer with a different rate, you'd have to non-renew that. So if it's not in there, that leaves that to basically that annual board approval. So if you look at our insurance tonight, you got dental and life and health, all that kind of stuff. You set that rate in place, and it ties to that, basically that organizer chart, that graphic organizer that says, yep, we pay 10% for health, and that's the annual approval, so that you guys can see as a board too. You're in one place. You're not saying, well, what's in Eddie's contract, or what's in this guy's or that gal's or whatever. It's trying to make your lives easier, so you don't have to approve all these different things. You're approving the system annually, and like those are the rates that we're into, and I put in payroll and so on and so forth. But it also makes it too so that you don't have issues with your non-discrimination testing with your cafeteria plan for section 125.
Okay, so the other thing in item Q, the administrator is eligible for retirement benefits set forth in the professional handbook. Appendix B, it should be Appendix A. Appendix B does not have anything to do with retirement health according to the handbook I was looking at online. My other question is, according to the matrix and reading the handbooks, number of sick days and bereavement. The way I'm reading the handbook, sick days you get 10, bereavement you get 10. So are they getting 20? But the contract says we get 3 days per family member. I mean, there's just lots of little things in here, and I didn't want to take the whole time. So I sent Steve an email, but I know Steve's really busy.
And I didn't respond to
No. It seems as we go on, I've got lots of things in the wording. I have one says it's accrued, and then the next sentence says we don't accrue. But we're gonna pay based on prorated for the amount of time you work in school. Well, that's prorated. It's saying no, and then it says yes.
Heidi, can you hold on here, back me up one thing at a time. So, the administrator, I'm looking at this piece right here. Administrator is eligible, set forth in the standard handbook, Appendix B, okay? Reimbursement arrangements. Okay, and 29, let me just peek up here. I want to see the table of contents.
While he's looking that up, some of the other things that I caught, it says vacation pay. You can have from 9 to 12 days. As a person signing a contract, I'd like to know, am I getting 9, am I getting 12, am I getting 10? Some say holidays, you may get this, you may get this, or you may get this. I guess, the contracts are yours. I don't want to cause a problem if.
We may have bumped the handbook appendix at one point, but the appendix piece that's referring to is that section right here. And it is A, you are correct. So this is where it gets into it, but yes, all the information that they would need is there. So my apologies, it should be A.
No, that's fine, I don't mind doing this.
What's the next one you got?
Well, I know at one time we talked, the paragraphs for the contribution to the OPEB, is that what, again, the attorney telling us where your matrix says we put $2,100 in there? Are we not supposed to put a figure in there?
So where's OPEB? Which document are you looking at?
I guess I'm,
Because I don't think we have OPEB in the contract.
if it's L, the Wisconsin retirement plan?
The Wisconsin retirement plan is, yeah, like the WRS you're talking about?
Well, it's on the matrix, on your chart, Eddie, the OPEB, your matrix.
So are you talking about right here?
Yeah,
Okay.
but the contracts, it's not in the contract.
Yes, basically the section you just corrected me on, section or appendix A, that is what this is. That is that section.
Okay.
They're synonymous.
So I guess I really don't want to take the time I have lots on here.
But this is the time to do it though.
One of the things I don't like is the administrator's contract is really nicely detailed. Then we keep going down and we keep going down, they get less and less. And by the time we get to the letters to the employees, it pretty much says, we'd like you to come back, here's your assignment, here's your rate, are you eligible for benefits, yes or no, if you want to know what that, read the book. To me as an employee, we have an administrator contract that's 3 pages long, and the poor employees that are hall monitors, maybe janitors, are like, just go read the book and it'll tell you what you're eligible for. I mean, if we're gonna take the time for the other employees, we should make all the employees in the school feel important instead of go read the handbook.
So do you understand do you understand the why behind that?
Okay, explain it.
I mean, just in short, right? So again, if you look back, if you go back to the topic summary sheet from last year, right?
Yep.
The teacher contract was quite lengthy. I think the teacher contract last year was longer than the administrator contract this year. I have to double check the count, but I think if not, it's darn close. I want to say it was 5 pages or so, something like that. In any case, over time, from when Act 10 happened to when we did kind of some adjusting and cleanup here, you've got a lot of redundancy. We also used to have something called a staff resource manual. So like the staff resource manual isn't really in play anymore. The handbook is regulating all these things, and part of the reason for that is because when you have a staff resource and a contract and a handbook, you have so many things. You have exactly what you just caught me on. You have the wrong appendix referenced in a different place. So the less of those things that we try to have, that we maintain every year, the cleaner we can try to keep it and shorter and sweeter. Now with regard to the overall length, those contracts that are coming through 118.22 versus 118.24, that's your admin contract versus your teacher contract, and then on
Right.
top of that, you've got support staff who are quote-unquote at will. So at will in the state of Wisconsin essentially means there is no contract, you can be let go at any time. Now, the reality is that that's often not the case, right? Like you've got protected classes, you've got all kinds of other things that actually don't make it that easy, but we're called an at will state. So when they get, as a support staff member who's hourly, when they get that notice in the spring, it's because there is not contractual rights in that class of employee in the state of Wisconsin. Now teachers, the law around, for example, non-renewal and why they're under 118, the law itself, when you look at it, is terrible. However, and I say terrible because it's ridiculously short, it is very much founded on case law and outcomes of court hearings. So they have a contract that makes that reference. It gets into the liquidated damages piece. But again, it's a fairly short agreement and everything else is outlined in the handbook in an effort to keep it short and sweet. The administrator piece is separate on top of that because those contracts have another layer for more than 1 year. But again, there's still pieces that we are trying to connect to the handbook or to that chart up there so that again, we don't have all these individual things going on. And I can try to make them shorter, and we tried to do that. That's why you're getting a letter, like I tried to get everything as short as possible. It's gonna be tough to get much shorter than that unless, for example, I go and make an administrator handbook on top of the 2 handbooks we already have. Does that make sense?
Well, I guess as a hall monitor, kitchen, I'm gonna say secretaries, sorry. You know, they're getting a letter that says, go read your handbook. To me, it's impersonable.
We can do something to make it more personal if you'd like. At the end of the day, we're trying not to write it, like, they wouldn't get a contract though. I mean, I guess you could. Could you as a board make a contract for every support staff? You absolutely could go above and beyond and give them all 1-year agreements and do that.
Well, all it is a letter of intent. And some of the employees that have approached me have said, they signed a contract in June that had to be signed. And by the time the handbook came out, the benefits we had in June, apparently something changed from what they saw to what they had when the handbook was approved. I didn't ask the details, I just said, thank you for telling me. But they're like, we'd at least like to know what we're signing and what benefits we get, that we're signing and we thought we were gonna get this, but now we're only getting this.
I think what happened last year, and correct me if I'm off base, I think we had like some of those insurance renewals, and they were done, I wanna say in May, but like they hadn't made it into a handbook yet. But at the end of the day, if you said like or if the person who you talked to said, oh, the benefits got worse and we didn't find out until after we signed, I don't think that was the case. Like we got a 0% renewal on insurance, all the contribution rates stayed the same. I think it was 2 years ago that we made it so one of the plans was free. I don't know, unless I'm forgetting something or whatever, but
I didn't
I don't
want to
think-
ask, so. The other thing is liquid damages. I thought as a board, we made it when the teacher resigned last year, the beginning of August. I can't remember what it was, but was it only like $1,000 or something? And we were left high and dry without a teacher. And I thought we as a board changed these figures. I could not find them in the minutes. That it wasn't prorated, it was a flat amount. That if you leave after you sign this contract, it was either $2,000 or $2,500. That it was going to be, so we stopped having people leave because $1,000 isn't gonna get you a teacher in 2 weeks when school's ready to start. But I went through all the minutes and I was having a hard time finding it.
I say this is what you guys approved last year, 500,000 and 1,500. I did not change any of them, and that's what went through on the approval.
Okay, when it happened would have been in the August meeting or the September meeting when we approved the liquidated damages for that person. And we talked about it as a board to bring it back this year, when these contracts were done, to change that.
Okay, we
I
can
don't
change it.
remember what it was.
We can make it whatever you guys want to make it.
It was a higher dollar amount because it left us high and dry when the person left. And it says in the wording, you know, if there's a reason for medical, family, whatever, we can waive that. But I know it was a higher amount, not tiered, and it would have been like August or September.
I do remember.
Just a flat.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
And I'll just throw in my 2 cents worth. My experience over the last 5 years with the teacher shortage, districts will pay the liquidated damages. So you could move it to 5,000. The old concept was it was a deterrent to leave late in the year. When you have somebody else paying it for you, it no longer becomes a deterrent. If a district wants your AP bio teacher in late August, they're gonna pay the liquidated damages. It's not different whether it's 1,500 or 5,000 or 7,000. So for the teacher, there is no disincentive.
And again, it's in the chart, and we set these up too, though, also to like have them get bigger as you go up the food chain. And back to your question about the letters and who's got a bigger letter and a less letter, the folks with shorter letters can leave whenever they want. There is no penalty. And so again, like if you did say, well, we want to do a contract for everybody, we'd probably be going down some version of a path like this if you start doing that, because
and I'm not saying a contract, it's a letter, it's just to make these employees at our school feel important, that we want them to come back next year. Maybe I'm all wrong, if I am, that's.
we can revisit for sure, like the human piece of it.
Now,
That's
one of
not a
the other
problem.
things I found in reading the handbook and
Yep.
these contracts, the HSA program.
Okay.
It's $1,000 for single, 2,000 for family. And then in the employee handbook, it says if you're over the age of 55, you get an additional 1,000.
No, like there's additional contribution eligibility. So when you hit 55, those folks are eligible to kick in extra money at their own expense if they want to. I was getting some questions from staff about it. So
we gotta look at that wording because it says something about if you're over 55, you get an extra 1,000.
Yep, let's have a look.
Unless I'm totally misunderstanding it, which I could be.
Do you know what page it was on, Heidi, or no?
I'm gonna say it's under the HSA.
It's the cross-referencing, that's the word.
I'm gonna blow this up so you can see better, sorry. And it wasn't in this?
No, it's
No,
in,
okay.
and it was like one line under the paragraph. I mean, when I read it, I took it that if I'm over 55, I get an extra $1,000.
Eddie, can you look it up by 55 rather than
I-
the contract?
I did a little, I hit 5,5, assuming it's 5,500, but if it's, this is not it, right, Heidi? This is under the early retirement benefit?
No, it was under the HSA. It was under a paragraph with writing about being eligible for the HSA contribution.
I don't have HSA or H.S.A.
No, I wrote my notes.
Well, it should be
Either-
under benefits.
Yeah, as I say, and I was in benefits, and it's not, like, benefits refers to, so I'm in the benefits section, for example. This is Wisconsin for comp. You didn't go to the benefit guide, did you?
Eddie, I was in so much stuff that.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll say this, like, I can double check it too, like when we're at
I
a
can
meeting and
look
make
at-
sure.
I
At the
can
end of the day,
look
there's a catch-up provision, they call it, and it is, once you hit a certain age, you as the employee can put additional money in. It is not the district doing that, but they are eligible to do it once they hit that magical age threshold.
Okay,
Um,
I'll look it up and email you guys.
Okay, that would be
While you're
great.
there, under the,
It's in the guide.
Oh, it's in the
sick day-
guide?
I see it in the guide, Heidi.
What does it say? Did I
It says
totally
money,
misread it?
how the HSA works, and it talks about, yeah, the money, but it does send an extra 1,000 if you're age 55 or older. Contributions from you.
But the
What-
line just says,
What page are you on in that book? So I can pull it up here. Or in the booklet.
12.
12.
So it says pre-tax contributions from you up to a total of, and then it has 3 bullet points underneath. And the third one says an extra 1,000. but the heading says pre-tax contributions from you.
And you being, you the employee?
Yeah.
Okay, but we're paying this.
No.
No, not that one.
So you can put in total in an HSA. I forget what the total is this year. It
Right.
keeps, like, it's been indexed. It's like $8,000 or something total for a family plan. So they can go put in, sorry, there it is, $8,300. That's the amount you can put in. So at the end of the day, they also have to understand that what the district puts in and what they put in can't exceed the $8,300. So yes, at the end of the day, we put in the $2,000 for a family plan or $1,000 for a single. That leaves, if it's a family plan, in this case, they can still put in $6,300. And they can actually do $7,300 if they're that age. They can exceed that limit.
So what does that line say, Eddie? I can't read it.
It just says an extra $1,000 if you're age 55 or older. But again, it's under the heading, like Jen said, pre-tax contributions from you
Okay,
up to a total of. And that guide is made by the insurance vendor.
Yeah,
That's not
okay.
made by me.
got it.
But
No, I caught that and
Yep.
it just stuck right away. So under the sick leave and the bereavement
okay, and are we in a contract or are we in a handbook?
handbook,
Okay,
it says we get, not to say we, there's 10 days sick time. And the bereavement made it sound like there's, what is that paragraph heading?
what do you mean? It says for leaves to the death of a family member, the district will excuse and pay the employee's wages in full for up to 3 days per incident with approval from the district administrator. The maximum benefit in a given school year is 10 days. So here's what was happening. Person would have X individual in their family pass away, and they would go to that thing and they would use their days. Then an aunt, an uncle, another family member would pass away. They'd go talk to the district administrator, they would approve extra days. So it's like, well, if we're gonna do this, why don't we just write it down? We're all on the same, page then, and so there it is. It's not a guarantee of any days, like you have to have somebody who has passed away, and like, there's still a limit of 3 maximum. So if somebody dies in California and you need a full week, you don't get to go through 5 days or 8 days all at once, you still only get the 3 per incident. But again, it added just some flexibility for when someone passed away, more than one person in 1 year. That's what it was intended to do. We can get rid of it, but yeah, it's not like they get 10 up front or all at one time.
You don't get paid out if you don't.
Correct.
Right. Okay, on the full-time professional staff contract, in the administrative contract, it says we must hold a license. That's valid. Are we allowed to add the wording that's in policy 3120 that said in signing this contract, you must hold a license, a valid license? Like we do in the administrative contracts?
Yep, hold on a second here. Yeah, so right here, it's covered in there already. So this second line, it's kind of one big long first line. Yada, 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 referred to as teacher, and then it says, a professionally trained educator legally qualified in the state of Wisconsin, so on and so forth. So if you don't have a license, the contract is null and void. You must be licensed to be null and void. Now, Steve and I had a quick conversation today. How often do districts enforce that? That's a different question. But the contract is set up correctly, and you as a board have the authority to say, no license, no contract.
Because they should hold a license in the state of Wisconsin to even sign this.
You are
correct?
100% correct. You are spot
Does that
on.
include those who are working towards it that have some?
They would have a license with STIP, so they still have a license. They don't have to have the final or the correct license for anybody to be where they don't belong is that license with STIP. So, yes, as long as they pay for that, they're eligible to hold the contract.
And actually, it says in statute, if they don't have a license,
Correct.
we can't pay them.
Well, our policy says if they don't have a license, they are to be terminated if they cannot provide the license in 10 days of signing this contract.
Correct.
And we have had some people on our staff without licenses.
Without stipulations as well.
So in short, like your contract's set to go. the human behavior that goes with it is another conversation. But contracts covered.
But I wanna make sure that, you know, they're gonna sign when they hold a valid
Yep.
license.
The barrier you run into where districts get more flexibility is when you send in your DPI license application, sometimes it takes 3 to 4 months for the DPI to act on it. So at that point, it's what do you do? Typically, what I've done in the past, and what Katie and I have talked about, we can look up online and see that the license has been applied for and it has been paid for. That's the criteria we're using. When the DPI chooses to act on it is kind of up to the DPI.
Other questions, places, issues, problems? And we will update, like, you have several approvals on your agenda tonight, right? Like for insurances and all that kind of stuff. So like this document, pending any changes, this will get updated so that it reflects what you guys approve as a board. And again, like when Lorinda sits down to do payroll and get all the new contracts entered in and check deduction rates and everything else, all of that is tied to this.
Supervisory support staff member is required to participate in conferences for employees' personal growth. They are required and have to every year.
Hold on, I'm going to the right place. And I'm sorry, you're looking at the supervisory support staff or the non-supervisory?
Supervisory.
Okay. All right, and I'm sorry, what section are you in?
VPD.
Or? So down, you're talking about other fringe benefits down here?
It just, I have it that it is a requirement that a supervisory support staff member has to participate in a conference.
Here, let's see if conference is in here.
I guess I'm just
So-
asking if that's,
If this is where you're referring to it, it says as required by the board or the employee supervisor. So it doesn't mean it's required automatically. It means, I'm just gonna make up an example. If Steve says, you know, Joe Doobie, you will go to this conference, like he's covered. He can say that. That's the purpose of it. It doesn't mean he automatically has to go to the annual XYZ conference every year. So, and then further down the reference to the conferences themselves, again, or to professional development, that is more like not just a conference, like that reference to credits and stuff has come out of the handbook.
yeah.
But
Okay.
other things.
That's fine.
You're done? Okay.
Coming back to one of the conversations after ACT had multiple districts that I'm familiar with went to a one-page letter of appointment for all staff that were not administrators and everything referenced him. Again, that's that, the more you have in the contract language, the more you're referencing something incorrectly in a contract and not in the handbook. But where I started this conversation, ideally you're gonna have your handbook updated before all of those contracts come out, so that when people check back, they're looking at a current contract for the following school year. And yes, stuff does change over time.
Part two of why, like, we were in May last year, like, we were trying to do the comp plan, right? So like the comp plan was pushing some of those things back. So like we hopefully would not be that far this year because we're not redoing or doing all of that work to feed into it. So I did want to just share this from Heidi's questions because I do think it's important you guys understand as well, because everybody understand the difference between the letter of assignment and the letter of assignment / reasonable assurance and the purpose behind that. It's basically like unemployment. So if you're a 10-month employee, you have to provide this letter in statute. Otherwise, they're eligible to call for unemployment, and then I get bills every week to pay them all summer long, in theory, if they want to file. So I have to have issued them that letter. the letter itself is not like, it's not a welcoming thing. Totally get that. We could maybe add some welcomingness to it, so to speak, but the letter itself references statute, and that is its purpose. The ones who are like 12-month year-round folks that never have a break in service, those folks are probably getting the shortest, they're getting the shortest letter that says, yep, if you have questions, see the handbook, and, you know, there's not a whole lot in there other than what their position is as of the new year, unless there were some changes. Granted, like the handbook says they can be changed pretty much at any time anyways, but it says here's the rate, here's the position, so on and so forth.
How does the board feel about putting more specifics into district administrator contracts? Like how you know it?
Well, no, that's.
I mean, or just administrator contracts?
Well, I
Well,
guess
you were just talking you were actually talking more part-time and.
all the contracts.
But you felt like it got less and less specific as you went.
Yes. Yeah.
Into maybe
Kind of a higher.
different, hierarchy.
I guess I can look at the contract and go, I don't feel comfortable with it, okay? But the people it affects are those three sitting there. And if it's not a problem with what you're signing and it states everything and you understand it clearly, I'm fine. But I guess some of the wording when I look at contracts as an employee, that some have to sign for some of our jobs. I guess I don't like, you may get this, or you can get this. How do I know? I guess I'm a person who wants it specific, that I know exactly what I'm getting. But if it's okay for you guys, I'm fine. I would want it more specific than it just saying read the handbook, or saying if you work this many days, you get this. If you work this many days, you get this. One contract says on bereavement, you get 3 days for every one of these family members. The next one just says, you get 10 days. So some say you get 9 days vacation, some say you get 12. Some say, well, you get 5 holidays, some say you get 11, some say you get 12. That does everybody understand what they're getting as an employee of Lakeland High School? That's what I guess I just want to clarify.
One of their benefits too is when we get open records requests, or some of you guys, like Pam used to request those quite a bit. Again, like when Lisa goes to turn them out, should have to turn out 10 contracts. Like, there's the matrix, it's all there. And so it helps also just kind of make it so it's not an individual, individual open records request. It's like, yeah, it's on that. And that literally is like, that's on the website. So somebody says, well, what's in your administrative contracts? They're all out here, here you go.
I feel like it, I don't know, I guess we're all adults, and when you're in maybe the first year, you wouldn't understand everything. But you also have petty to ask, plenty of people to ask, like you don't feel that, I don't know. I feel like it could get very time consuming to specifically stuff like that, but then I'm not the one doing it, Lisa is.
Well, once it's in the contract, it's in the contract, you're not changing it.
We would still have to list it twice though, in the sense, like, let's say Katie goes and signs up her contract, and we go right in 10% health contribution. So does that mean that if she changes to the narrow plan midway through the year because of whatever she's allowed to, that suddenly we have to redo the contract? Or do I still have to list 2 rates in the contract and then list those circumstances? You know what I mean? Like, you'd have to list that in there then, because they get to choose right now between 2 different health plans and 2 different contribution rates. So.
Thoughts, anybody?
I think what's really important is what Steve was saying. If the handbooks are going to be referred to, they've got to be up to date. They cannot be changing after somebody signs a contract.
We made handbook changes like twice last fall. I want to say August and October or something like that. Like, and it could have got bumped down. But I can also probably get rid of the appendix to say, see the appendix section that refers to. That way, it doesn't just say Appendix A. It'll say, the appendix referring to, the post-employment benefit for whatever, and that's it. But that way, we don't have to worry about the letter A or B or whatever happens.
I think that would be clear.
I got no problem with that. That makes good sense.
Yeah, and that way when things do change, it's.
Yep.
Because we've been talking about that in policy, well, this one changed, but these are the 3 policies, they didn't get changed, and trying to work them all together.
This is our first go, guys, remember, like, we went a long ways in 1 year. You had, I don't know, however many different contracts, and it's like, you know, that's a big jump last year to get into a place where you can say, it's in one place, here's how you can find it, it's organized, it's logical in its progression, like, that's a huge jump.
What I can tell you is, over a lot of years of doing this and having handbooks online, and having your handbook up to speed and giving a letter of appointment, and then the number of times someone will say, oh, I didn't know that was in the handbook. Even though they sign a nice little paper that says they've read the handbook, that's dealing with human behavior, so you'll still run into that from time to time. I think the best thing we can do, have our ducks in a row, so we're approving the handbook, we're sending out letters of intent or letters of, call them contracts, I call them letters of appointment, because I see them differently. And at that point, you're referencing current date, and then you try not to change that handbook unless you really need to until the next year. And you'll always have handbook updates as benefits change, as circumstances change.
Okay, thank you. Then, anything else? Mr. Bowman?
Well, you want to talk about the comp plan?
If that's what
That's
you want.
next on the agenda. Eddie and the board and Bob did a lot of work last year on the comp plan. It's been my time reviewing it. I did have an opportunity to sit down and I visited with 6 individuals who are on the comp plan committee. Nobody really seemed to have any huge concerns. The biggest, wasn't a complaint, the biggest comment I got was so much of it was done coming in, where it was obvious that Bob and Eddie had done their homework coming in, and they would come in and talk about, this is kind of where we're going, this is the plan, receive feedback. I think the key to it is you've never really lived through a cycle. I think your comp plan should be one of those things that's looked at, revised, tweaked every year as you go through and you're looking at it. One of the things I do like about it, let me back up. When Act 10 came into place, there was a gentleman who did his doctoral study on Wisconsin comp plans about 5 years post Act 10. Surveyed every school district in the state, came to 2 conclusions. Number 1, he could not find 2 school districts that utilized the exact same comp plan. Everything was all over the board. Second conclusion he came back to was, if there was an ideal plan, people would be replicating. What I like about the comp plan we have here is what you would call your old lanes. Those are district defined. If things become more important as far as professional development, professional growth, you can adapt to some of those things. Do I think they're perfect now? Probably not, but they can be tweaked as you move forward. Steps coming down. The biggest complaint you're going to get is there's a bottom. Do you start at the bottom? But it also gives you a place to start when you're placing a new teacher coming in, and they've got this set of criteria and background and experience. These are the amount of years of experience they have. Very similar to the old steps and lanes contract from preamble. So I think it really has some benefits. I have 2 personal beliefs just in looking at it, and maybe it's from sitting in my chair. Number 1, I've shared with you already. I don't know that that top salary matrix should be based on the Lakeland superintendent. I believe it should be based on a target or a matrix. The concept is really good. I mean, don't get me wrong, because you should look at that. What I don't like is that it's based on the salary of an individual. You have a new superintendent coming in, positive, negative, he comes in and rocks the boat and he needs needs 20 grand more, that kind of gets into an assumption by staff that, well, everybody, this is gonna roll through everybody. If he does really bad and you're not gonna bump the salary the way you want to, then staff has that kind of perception. That's related to being tied to an individual salary. I think there's ways of doing it.
You guys understand that that's not the case anymore, though, right? Like, does everybody understand that?
What do you mean understand what's, yeah?
Do you understand that it's not now tied to the superintendent? That we're all on the same page.
We were never told that it wasn't.
You have to understand that there's like a transition, right? Like the initial setting of the data, okay? So like when we go and we try to figure out what's a reasonable pay for any of the staff members, you want to have some understanding about how the internal positions in your organization relate. So for example, one of the things that the committee discussed and whatnot was like, well, where should a teacher end if we have an associate principal role, right? Like should a teacher be able to make 120 and the AP starts out at 90? Does that make sense? And like, so when we're sitting in the room, I'm sure some of the portrayal is like, well, Eddie and Bob came in with this. There were some things that we talked about and said like, there's only so much flex that we can have here because we can't hire associate principals because it's too much of an advantage to be a teacher, meaning that like there's less days worked, the risk is lower, and you get the summer off, so to speak. The AP does not, they work more, and they're tied into some of the summer school stuff. So again, like, yeah, there were some of those pieces, but essentially that first phase of saying we're gonna tie this to the superintendent, it's not tied in an ongoing sense. It was tied in the sense of setup. So we said, okay, here's the data on the superintendents. And it's not just one person's exact rate, it's the range of values. Now we can say, okay, well, on average, the average business manager makes X percent of the average superintendent, the average principal, the average whatever, secretary, custodian, so on and so forth. So I have a relative place to start everybody. Now that that's done, right? Like, so now that we've got that initial setup, when I go from one year to the next and we roll and we start to say, okay, well, how does a step change and how does this notion of CPI fit into this? We're not tied to what's happening in that role of the superintendent anymore. So I'm going to show you this really quick and I just want you to understand it. So this should look somewhat familiar. Give me 1 second, we're going to blow it up. Okay, so this should look somewhat familiar. I know numbers are a little small. I'm going to give you this. I brought it with, didn't know if we'd need it or not. But I suppose now is as good time as any. You maybe do, and I'll give you the first one anyways, just in case I had to bump the button or yes. And they're paper clippers. There's two, what do you call it? There's two like little staple things in here. Yep. So the first pile on top has no shading on it. So that's basically like what you see like in terms of like what's on the website. That has the actual comp plan that's posted in the thing. Now keep in mind these are new numbers and there's different ranges, but if you said, what does the website look like? The pieces that are pasted in there, where there's the little story, they are these charts where it's coming from. And those of you who were on the board last year, you probably remember Bob and I coming to you with this big 11 by 17 sheet of paper and all that so you can see everything, okay? So that's the first stapled part. The second stapled part, again, is the hourly rate breakdown, because again, so much of that conversation was understanding, because you gotta remember the people in that committee, it wasn't like just teachers, or just this, or just that. We pulled 14 people into that committee. So at times, like there was awkward silence in the room because what helped one group didn't help the next group, okay? So like there were times where like we would show them data and like if I'm just gonna make up an example, if I am a teacher and yep, we talked about that 89th percentile last year, and I'm like at the top of the scale, and I'm like, yeah, I'm at the 89th percentile for that data. And then we go look at, for example, the curriculum. I know we looked at curriculum director pay at one point. That was at like the 25th percentile. It's like, okay, let's kind of, I guess, eye-opening to see where are your peers. And again, we had that data not just for any one role, we pulled it for all roles. So as you're looking at this one with the pink highlighting on the front, that is looking at an hourly rate breakdown so that you can see the ones that are highlighted in red show you folks who are in some of those roles who are making, for example, less than the master's degree column or the middle column of the teacher complement. Okay? Now we were also mindful of where is the starting teacher hourly rate relative to certain support staff roles. So for example, it's tough when you have a classroom aide making more than a starting teacher. Those are other things that are in districts I know I've been in, it's like a little bit of a tough sell sometimes, or it brings up those issues. Anyways, this is the rollover. I only wanted to show it to you so you have it. So back to this, when you say, are we connected to the superintendent? All I'm doing to get the new plan and to try to keep this simple so that people can understand it is this. I'm going back to the survey data with that, and not just the 14 people. We surveyed the entire staff twice on this topic because there were staff on the committee who were concerned that there were people who didn't understand the question. So again, like we beat it twice. we did the survey twice, and a lot of people participated. It wasn't like I got a quarter of the staff or 50%. We were like, I don't know, 70, 80, like it was high. So long story short, there was this desire to have some version of flat growth. A lot of the districts are doing a percentage. So we talk about CPI, this year's CPI is 3.95%. When you take 3.95 times the superintendent salary versus 3.95 times the hall monitor salary, they're two very different numbers. In the case of the 8% 2 years ago, that was the difference between 12,000 and 1,200, right? So you're looking at exponential growth versus some version of either flat growth or a hybrid of in the middle. The way I'm getting these rates is I'm doing two things. One, I am still using what was originally set up in the comp plan, meaning when we used the data, we knew that in order to have 12 steps, these were based on the data as to how we got to the step amount for each of the different roles. So if I'm a technology director, based on the range of values that the pay data showed, if we want to have 12 steps, we need to have about 1783 be the increase over a 12-year span. Okay? That span looks different for a district administrator. It looks different for, I forget, sorry, whatever that one was, the nurse or mental health navigator or whatever. That's where those rates are. Those are still in there. None of those has changed. The teacher steps, when you go down from one to the next, same as last year. They're still $1,350. No change. And again, like that was kind of based on the number of years we were working with, the range of the values we were trying to work with, and have it all come together. Same thing with the support staff, okay? The CPI piece comes in like this. Took the teacher starting pay rate. This year, teacher starting pay rate is $50,000, okay? For simple numbers, 4% of 50,000 is? Go ahead. $2,000, okay? So I can look at a teacher and say, okay, 189 day contract, 7.5 hours a day. Basically, there is some hourly rate that $2,000 breaks down to. Does that make sense? So $2,000, when you break it down by, I think it's 1,417 hours, is about $1.39 an hour from a CPI standpoint. When the committee talked about it, again, it was like, okay, the loaf of bread for the superintendent is still the same as the loaf of bread for the hall monitor. Everybody's got to eat. Gallon of gas, whatever you want to use as the example. So the thought was that $1.39, if it's truly supposed to be tied to a cost of living, that should be the same for everybody. Now where you get a little bit of variance, and this is kind of where the surveys led us as well, to do a full flat rate. For example, if I take a hall monitor who's making, let's say, $18,000 a year, and I go give that person $2,000, there's a lot of time that they may work elsewhere and they're not here. And so you're giving them like CPI credit for time they're not here. and you're significantly limiting like the other pays on the other end, like for the superintendent. So the thought was take that hourly rate, have it reflect the hours worked. So for example, if you're a 12-month employee, you're gonna get the full amount of the CPI. You're gonna get $2,000 because you work year round. Or actually, sorry, the teachers are only at $1,400, so you're gonna get more than the $2,000. I think it turns out to be $2,800 at 4%, okay? But that's because they're working year round. Teachers working 1,400 hours, they're getting the 2,000. Somebody like a hall monitor is getting like 800 or whatever. But again, that's tied to the hours worked. And so that's how those CPI pieces are working through here, but they're working independently because now I'm just adding that to each of those individual columns. I'm not tying it to the superintendent.
Okay, I think we'll probably need more time to hear your story on this, and can we do that in the regular meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm done, like I don't have much more, that's what I did.
Because I do have some questions, but.
Yeah.
My question is, do you get to finish this?
No, that's my next thing here. What was your number 2?
My number 2 is, it talks about a freeze with an average in educator effectiveness. Educator effectiveness has 6 categories. In those categories, you're ranked 1, 2, 3, or 4. There was a portion in this that would freeze an individual if their average score was 2 or below. Number 1, you have to be really struggling to be 2 or below. Spent a lot of time on teacher evaluation over the course of a lot of years. I don't believe those categories can be averaged because they're measuring very different things. There's also a portion in educator effectiveness that when it talks about 2, it talks about needs improvement or development. A first or a second year teacher that gets a 2 in curriculum is different than a 14-year veteran that gets a 2 in curriculum. They should know their content, they've been in the field. So I struggle with the fact of averaging. I also believe strongly if teachers that are not performing at the level they should be performing, they should not have a pay increase. It's what that looks like. The format I've been most familiar with is if they're on a plan of improvement and you're working on developing their skills to the point where they need to be on a plan of improvement, they're just frozen for the subsequent year. In conversations with some of the admin, we have also had conversations about the specific category of professionalism. If an individual, whether you're first year or 10th year or 15th year, if you're getting a 2 in professionalism, I'm going to struggle with that. So I think that criteria should be looked at. Whether or not you actually change the language, that's up to you. And, you know, I've had multiple conversations and maybe not going back and forth about this. That's a personal opinion. You're looking at the comp plan coming from the outside. And quite honestly, I want to commend the district for looking at this. The concept of the way this was developed is a model for others to replicate. The concept of using your lanes for district-specific things that are important to the district is wonderful. You should continue to focus and redefine those. So I think all of those are there. The 2 comments I had were based on personal perceptions and I guess my own importance.
So would you recommend them, is this a process of the policy where if you've had a 2 or below in any one of those categories, you would automatically have a plan of improvement?
No, what I would say is if you're not on a plan of improvement, or if you have a 3 or 4, which is average. And the concept of educator effectiveness, the CC6 model we're using, is the default is 3. You go into an observation, the default is 3, which is effective. You look for examples of distinguished, you look for examples of predictive improvement, and you let the data from your observations and the data from lesson plans and all those documents kind of drive your rating. there's a whole series they go through, where these guys sit through, and they go through a calibration, that's the word I'm looking for. So the concept of calibration, if Levi, Jen, and Katie go in and observe the same teacher during the same lesson, there should be a high probability that that teacher gets the same score from these people. And there's an exercise, and they have to be recertified every 2 years, and they have to go online and you spend all of these time watching lessons. You look at example lesson plans, everybody reads independently. You then have the conversation about this is what I gave, this is why. Then you have an expert rater who does it, and then you have to pass the test at the end to be certified as the educator effectiveness. So there's a whole process in this.
And we can ask questions about that at the regular meeting, right?
I'm good with that.
Okay. All right, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Okay, and now we're going to go into our regular meeting, so please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Peck. Here. Mr. Ward. Mr. Shaw.
Here.
Mrs. King. Here. Mr. Justice. Mrs. Noel. Here. Mrs. Schmidt. Here. Mr. Peterson. Here. Mr. Almond.
Here. Meeting was properly posted.
It has been.
Thank you. Any public participation? Okay.
Oh, yes.
Do we?
Wait,
Yes.
wait, Terry's here.
Okay,
Sorry,
thank you
it's
very
kind of hard
much.
to hear back there.
Introduce who you are and why you're here to speak. Thank you.
I'm Terry Howard, and I'm here to speak about the Oneida County presentation on sextortion that has affected a lot of our young kids in our community and neighboring communities. I went to the presentation that they had in Rhinelander, and boy, they had a lot of really good information, and unfortunately there was only about 25 parents there. But they had done a school-wide presentation earlier that day, and to bring awareness to the kids. I know it's really hard for parents to stay on top of what their kids are doing online, but basically what's happening is these kids are being targeted maybe in game rooms where they're playing with other people that they don't know, or maybe even one of their friends' Instagram accounts has been hacked. And this actually happened to a boy that actually goes to school here. He's, I believe, a senior in high school right now. But his account was hacked, or his friend, a girl that he knows, not a girlfriend, her account was hacked, and so it's some man that ends up photoshopping a naked picture of him. He's got a picture of him from maybe they're, from Instagram, and they Photoshop that he's like all out nude, and they're bribing these kids to get money. It's all about money. But these kids, I mean, they can't take that, the shame, the humiliation, and some kids, maybe they did take their own picture because they think they're talking to this girl that they've been chatting with for months online, and they're, it's kind of a form of grooming. And they want money. And they say, we're gonna send your picture to all of the people on your friends list, because now they've hacked into their phone and they have all their friends, and we're gonna send it to everybody at school, and you're gonna be a pedophile and your life is ruined. So these kids can't handle this, and within just a couple hours, they could commit suicide. There's families that this has happened to. Just a boy at DC Everest High School, this just happened to. And very open relationship with his family, and they just let him take his computer into his room, and it just happened so fast. I mean, they had no idea it was even happening. He'd been paying them money. It's all about the money. And just if we could get some awareness going, that's what I'm looking for. I know that Oneida County is coming to AVW, and I'm not sure exactly when, but it's this spring, to talk to the 7th and 8th graders. And, I'm just thinking that this is such a good thing to have here at Lakeland. Sextortion is huge, and human trafficking is also another big thing. Oneida County has a task force for crimes against children that they've set up, that 2 officers are specifically set aside. Any case that comes up involving a youth, they're immediately put on the case. But, you know, to bring awareness, these are hard criminals to catch. They actually showed a presentation about another boy that had committed suicide because he was being extorted. And they tracked, you know, it was supposed to be some cute girl or whatever. They tracked down these people all the way to Nigeria. And they actually went, tracked them down, and brought them back to the United States. And they're here serving their prison sentence here. But, you know, to stop this, to know what to do, you know, not delete the information if it's happening, or to give them any money, and, you know, just to bring awareness that this is really happening. And so these are the people, they're looking for money, and any way they can get it. And there's another group, they're more of a cult. They said it's like 776 is a number that they have used. They want you to mutilate yourself. So they've already got something on you, and they want a video of you mutilating yourself, like taking a gouge out of your stomach or cutting yourself, you know, this cutting that these youth have been doing. And they take these videos and then they sell them on YouTube to make money, you know, extorting all our young people. And they're so innocent, and so many of them have no idea, you know. Maybe they're not very popular in school, and hey, this cute girl, all of a sudden she's likes me and she's texting me, and you know, it's really not her, but they have no idea. So anyway, if we could do something here, I'd be all in to help whatever I can do to bring a presentation to Lakeland. And even, you know, I think it's important too for parents to know about this too. I think that a lot of people don't know. So.
Thank you very much.
Did you sign in over there?
Pardon me?
Did you sign in over there?
I did.
Can I guess? Yes, go ahead.
I spoke with both detective sergeants at United County. We have a date, time, and location set up for them to be here at LUHS already.
Oh, that's great.
As soon as I verify that I don't have a conflict in the location, we'll start publishing that. They've given me some flyers we can adapt to start publishing.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And advertising this. Our thinking in visiting with the detectives is we'll do one presentation in the evening, encourage parents to bring their kids. In reflection on Rhinelander, it was so many kids saw it during the day that nobody wanted to go again at night and bring mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
So they're experimenting with different ways of doing it.
Yes.
So we'll do a 5 o'clock here.
Yes. Oh, that's great. That's very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is board commendations. And we are going to recognize a board member who is no longer going to be with us, but proud that she was with us for 15 years. She's a retired educator. She, how many years in teaching? 30. And then she served 5 terms here, 5 3-year terms, along with being our WABS delegate, our CISA delegate, served on a number of committees, curriculum, building and grounds, budget, vision statement ad hoc, policy, finance, and the leader of our policy committee, and served as clerk and vice president, and many times, as you know, was our president. So we are going to miss you, Barb. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. I'll miss all of you, I will. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Student board representatives report.
Hello everybody. I feel like it's been a while since we've been able to give our report, so we have a handful of things to talk about.
The junior class is putting on their prom this Saturday. It's going to be held at the Campanile Center, and the theme this year is Field of Laurels.
Drama Club successfully put on their spring musical, The Lightning Thief, and it involved over 40 students.
Each grade had their second trimester celebrations this past week, where the students were honored for their academic achievements, attendance, and character.
Spring sports are in full swing with 195 athletes participating this year.
And the graduation committee will start to plan this year's commencement ceremony later this week.
And then lastly, the National Honor Society is hosting a blood drive on April 26th. The blood drive in February had a record amount of donors with the ability to save up to 100 lives. Thank you.
Thank you. District Administrator's report?
Bunch of things sitting on here. April, oath of office for those of you that have been elected or re-elected. You need to take your oath of office prior to April 28th because that's the last date. Traditionally, most boards, they come in on the last Monday and they take the oath of office. I've also seen it where you've had someone that had to attend a funeral out of town that was newly elected and they missed that. If you miss the April 28th date and wait till the last day to do it, the next day that seat becomes vacant. And then you have to go through an appointment and a whole bunch of stuff like that. Once you've been elected, you can take the oath of office anytime leading up to that, and then you're actually seated on the 28th. This would be one that Trevor might be interested in. With our Board of Educational election results, Dean won 2 seats. So he won the AVW seat and the at-large seat. Our at-large required 2 people, and Dr. Gilbert was elected, and Dean was elected. It doesn't allow us to fall back to next in line, although there was a difference of 27 votes. The way that works is Dean selected which seat he will take. He will take the AVW seat. That will leave open an at-large seat. In conversations with Lisa and Sean in going through our board policy, that position must be posted. We must take applications for that position, and then the board will select a candidate that will fill a 1-year term and have to be, because we're prior to November, will be on the ballot again in April of 2026. That make sense? So the way that all plays out, it's in policy, it's in statute. We can't appoint for the full 3 years because of the timing of this. If we were in the last year or the second of last year, we would have been able to do that. Okay. Summer 2025 projects. In conversation with our ad hoc facilities team, we're in the process of prioritizing. In conversations with the school safety team and admin, we are looking at, should we have a fiscal balance or any kind of budget surplus, which we don't know what that is yet. Should we be planning for some upgrades or some projects to accomplish this summer? I visited with Ellie from Nexus. We are narrowing that down. The priority in my mind, given when school started, is dealing with some security updates. Visiting with Levi and the school safety team today, we have to narrow those down. When I start to look at them and I'm looking at what if we may have for a surplus budget that would go forward, we're not going to be able to do a whole ton. So what I would like the board to be aware of, we're in the process of kind of narrowing some of that scope down. What can we do? Work with Eddie on what could that budget number look like, and then start to move forward. By the end of April, we'll need to come back, because if we're going to enter in and get something started, end of April is late. And then we're gonna have to bid out projects and get moving. But I think it's important for the community to see that we're not just sitting and waiting until an April 2026 referendum to deal with any of the security issues we had in the fall of 24. We're at least starting to take some paths. I had this, well, Ed was there, we had this conversation, with the ad hoc facilities team. I would say the general consensus was that makes some sense. What I didn't want to do is create an ad hoc facilities team and then unilaterally decide, oh, we're gonna shortcut you and we're gonna do this. So they're still in the process of prioritizing, but again, looking at school safety and security, we're gonna start to narrow that focus down and see if we have the ability to do that. If anybody has a problem with me kind of walking down this path, any of those projects would still have to go.
And just to let you know, those security items weren't the top ranked items, okay? They were down the list, but because of a potential limited amount of money that might be a surplus, these could be some things that were taken care of, where some of those higher priority items are gonna need significantly more dollars. Yes?
Just to clarify, when you say down the list, you mean, he means the facility committee's
Prioritization.
priority
Right.
list?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
They weren't the ones that jumped up to number one,
Right.
number two.
That's the list he's referring to, it's from the committee.
But what I would say is the number one and number two on that list, we're not doing with budget
No.
surplus. So that's a longer discussion and all that day will come. Yeah. Server room air conditioning went down. Typically I have a spending threshold of 10,000. I approved 15,350 to get new mini splits ordered and put in. Typically when I see this is kind of one of those that I think is a no-brainer. We have to fix it. I don't know that I want to wait a week or two to come to the board. So what I do is I make an executive decision, then I come here and ask for this. But I try to keep you updated through your updates. Lastly, April 22nd, we're hosting the WASB School Boards Association new member orientation here. It's always a good showing if you're available, just to show up, even if you're a more senior board member. If you're been around a while, it's always nice to have post-school to have 2 or 3 people that are here for that board meeting. And I was gonna talk about the school presentation, but I already did that.
Okay, very good, thank you. Next on the agenda is a report of our draft budget and 5-year cash flow projection.
Steve's got it for you, and it's got all the assumptions that are requested. And the topic summary sheet has all of those assumption changes. So net deficit, I'm looking at like 230, 220, but that's without anything from a facilities committee, that is without the staffing plan, if you approve the staffing plan tonight, and the possibility of renovating one of the foods rooms that's not currently used for foods. So there's probably another 20 or 30 there to make that happen. So
It's really hard to guess what it's gonna be in October when you're in March and April. You know, Eddie can do a pretty good job of projecting using numbers and noise and things forward. We also run into some pretty unanticipated things. Staff salaries is always gonna be the hugest. We also have some significant facility issues we need to address.
Can I ask about the foods section? I mean, I'm just wondering how wise it is to spend that money on extracurricular, not extracurricular, but elective course, rather than focusing on our main courses. Is there something in, and I probably, I'm sure I could look it up, are kids limited to how many foods classes they can take? Are they limited to the, I mean, it just seems like they've said it's increased and it's increased. To me, honestly, when I was in school, that's because it was an easy course. I mean, why would we spend a lot of money for an easy course for kids rather than spending the money on the core courses and improving those?
Well, your required courses are your core courses. Kids are gonna take their core, and you have electives. So when you start reducing sections in electives, kids are gonna pick different electives. And then that will reduce your section numbers, and we'll get it that when we start talking about staffing a little bit. All of our staffing is based on student requests for specific courses. as students' requests start to grow, you try to accommodate the student requests. In CTE and electives, my experience has been through 7th and 8th grade and then even into high school, when kids have a good experience in a specific content area, they tend to take more courses in that area. Whether it's shop, welding, if I go into welding and I really like it, I'm gonna take more welding. If I go into family and consumer ed and I start to like some of these courses, but we have enough variety of courses. And they're all driven by student requests.
Sure, as a student, though, I'd probably go for the easier classes as opposed to classes that might be a little bit more rigorous for me. So I'm wondering if that's encouraging going for easier classes as opposed to encouraging taking something that's a little, I don't know, that's my question. How rigorous are these courses? Am I just making cookies or am I actually doing something?
Well, you know, difficulty is based upon the student. For some students, taking family and consumer science might be very challenging. They don't know how to cook.
Correct.
And they don't want to.
But when you're looking at increasing this, how much are we increasing it by? How many students are wanting to take this course now? Because I would hope that the difficulty doesn't lie in 60% of our student population feels like, oh, that's going to be a difficult class. Because if that's the case, then we need to be more rigorous in our core curriculum.
And that's where Katie comes into play, making sure that standards are met, and it is challenging. And you know, being an elective teacher all my years, you know, I recruited hard. I felt I had a very strong curriculum, but you know, it's what students want to take, and based upon our choices here. And you know, I would hate to reduce elective opportunities to have students maybe find their potential career path. So,
family consumer ed is much more than the cooking.
I was throwing that out. I
Yeah,
wasn't saying that that's all it is. All I'm saying is that I wonder at increasing classrooms for that side of it when we are struggling already with our core curriculum standards, but testing scores. So why would we throw towards that end as opposed to classrooms that are more advanced?
Yeah, I definitely have some commentary on that. Obviously, our job as a high school, and this is my opinion, is to prepare kids for post-secondary life. 50% of our kids don't go to a four-year university because they choose not to, because they see no value in that process, because they have other avenues they want to pursue. I sat here probably 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when I was tasked with creating the district calendar as an assistant principal, which never happens in any district, but I remember going through that process and putting a lot of time into it and thought process into it. Came to the board presentation, and we had community members here who spoke about the need that they have for our kids. Our kids are the driving force of running the industry in our tourism-based community. So if I look at that and I say, our kids are working in all of these places in our community. We have people frequenting those places. They need to learn how to have responsible server training. They need to understand how to handle food and proper safety in the kitchen. They need to understand some of these roles that they're going to be playing for our community in a way that maybe they're not getting in their homes. Depending on what home they're growing up in, cooking in the kitchen might be throwing in something in the microwave, and that's what they eat every night. Cooking in the kitchen might mean we stop at Culver's and that's what we eat, right? So for our kids, training them to understand the need and the importance of nutrition in their lives as well. We have a great deal of kids that make it to culinary arts. Some of these kids go right from culinary arts into, rather than sharing a name of a student that we saw when we went over to Nicolay this year, who is thriving in Nicolay's culinary arts program because of her experience here at Lakeland, and it's what she wanted to do. She wanted to be a chef. And so to say, hey, as a freshman, you shouldn't take a class like this because we're going to cut this down and take away that opportunity, it now reduces an opportunity for a student to maybe to get to culinary arts because we didn't have a space for them as a freshman to take an elective that they chose or wanted to take. And so that'd be like saying, hey, we offer a lot of welding sections, we should take some of those away then too, because we want to cut down and get more kids into these core areas. The problem is the kids get to choose their electives, we don't get to choose them for them, and they're picking the spots that they like and want to be. We have a great deal of our kids that dislike school, and don't want to be here, and the only reason they come are for those elective classes. And so to say, hey, we're going to increase your rigor and demand in these core classes, we might see our attendance rate drop even further because kids are going to try to avoid something that they don't want to be a part of. So we use those pieces as a way to motivate kids to be in school, to get them the core academic areas, but also connect them to it. So if you'd say, hey, in the Massey house growing up, is foods the first class you take or that extra math class? I guarantee my mom would say the extra math class, right? But I can tell you that in some of our families, they'd say, I don't care if you take a math class or not, because after this, you're going to be working in a restaurant somewhere anyway, and you're going to be cooking the food that people are coming to eat. So while I understand and I get the perspective you're coming from, some of those classes may have less rigor when you're talking about like the book academic, like reading and having to study and go through those pieces of homework and all those accessories to it. They have a purpose for our kids in terms of what they want to do moving forward. And so it's our job as a high school to serve our community and our students in the areas where they want to be after high school. It's not our job to put them into a box and say everybody needs to fit this one mold of what's best. And so we have a commitment that I think we have to our community where we need to honor the requests of our kids to a certain extent, not full all out, but we don't have a wide variety in our family and consumer science. We have very few classes there, but kids want to be in those classes. And we had ran at 2 staff members in family and consumer science for a long time at Lakeland Union High School, and then we hit a period where that kind of dropped and fell off. And that growth is coming back now again to where it used to lie at, and that's why there's two outfitted rooms. The only thing we don't have in those rooms are the appliance equipment that used to be used in those rooms because those were outdated and those got moved on from it. But the setup is still there. So the process is just renewing the equipment, no different than it would be in any other classroom, saying we're not going to use textbooks from 20 years ago or pieces like that. So I guess that's just my take on that.
I struggle with putting in less rigorous classes just to get students here when we're school and education is the purpose. So, I mean, attendance isn't, education should be the end result. That's what I struggle with.
And I would challenge you to say that education, right, is different in the eye of the beholder, because everything is education, right? No matter what experience you go through, there's learning that takes place. And so I don't want to challenge you or fight you on this, but I would say that your belief of what an education a kid needs from high school isn't what our entire community wants. It's not just yours. And so while I might agree with a ton of the pieces that you have, Lisa, I would also say is that we have so many families that talk to us about what their kids want and need, and we need to provide that for everyone. And if we are only going to go one pathway and focus 100% on this narrow pathway, we're not serving a great deal of our kids.
Sure, but I'm just saying, let's not go 100% over this way as well. There's got to be a fine balance, and I'm wondering if we're at that balance or if we've gone beyond that by opening up a new classroom, having new costs in order to allow for that going over that balanced line of what we're going to offer for a class that's not as rigorous as other classes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we have 100% of the student body, and I don't know what the percentage is, that's going through that class because it's an easy class, to me, then that's gone over the line.
So I would say is you're making an assumption that that's why kids take that class,
I just
right?
told you I don't know the numbers. I'm just asking that question.
And so I would say that that's just I want to caution us in this process, and then I'll stop because I don't need to make an argument piece of this, but we want to continue to serve the needs of our students. And I would say that when you make this statement of saying, well, we're going 100% all in, you need to trust your administrative team that we're doing what's best for the kids in our building based upon what we know of the kids and what our kids are coming to us with the needs that they have. We're not going to make a decision to go 100% in on all electives and abandon our core requirements.
Our role as a board is to trust but verify. That's why I asked the questions.
Yep.
Just a minor comment. My grandson couldn't do fractions to save his ass until he took foods class where he had to do fractions and cups. And he said, oh, there's nothing, now I get it. So, minor point, but he got something out of it. And plus he makes some really good grapes right now.
Yes, Barb.
May I just say, I've been waiting, 15 years, and we as a board are supposed to be spending most of our time discussing student achievement and talking about students and what is best for the students. and this conversation has been wonderful. You can disagree all you want, but that's how we make things better. So please just keep it up after I'm gone.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is to review and discuss the complex construction approved amounts versus what we actually spent.
It is in my monthly thing, so I don't know if I'm gonna do that now or later, but there's links in that report.
Yes, yeah.
Like I can pull it up real quick.
Eddie, didn't the ticket booth end up being a lot more than what we were told?
I don't know what a lot is.
Well, 50,000 more at least?
I think it's over 60.
Yeah, it might have been 60,000 more.
Okay, that's a third one.
Yes, it's a lot. So where is that money coming from? Because there was a donation for, I thought it was supposed to cover it. Well, that donation amount was not that amount.
Okay, so this is just like, again, I forget which agenda item this is or whatever, but in my monthly report, there's a link, letter L. I don't know if it was I or L. So letter L just kind of has these couple links in here. First off, the total expense sheet from POB is a pretty nice tool. They do an effective job at making that information available. I think we've shared it a few other occasions prior to me. Bob was sharing it with you guys, I believe. But at the end of the day, it shows what was the original amount of the contract, what are the approved change orders, and then where do we now stand as a result of said change orders. So that is linked in here and available for your viewing pleasure. I apologize for the smallness. I'm going to just scroll down to the bottom here because that's mostly what we care about. So my understanding, original contract approval, this number. Now you got to remember too, the way they did it I think was kind of funky because like their commission pieces and some of these other like incidental things, contingency, whatever, the way the spreadsheet shows it, it's like listed separate from this. So if in your mind you're like, that's the number, or here you're like, no, that's the number. It's like, well, they're both numbers, and this is most likely to what hit the checkbook. But again, depending on what you were looking at the time and what you've been paying attention to, that may be the number that comes to mind when you're talking about this. The change orders that are carrying through about $340,000, a lot of those came through like while Bob is here. However, some of those change orders are reflective of things that were in the ticket booth. So when you look at the final result and where that is, this yellow box, and again, I maybe would have wired the spreadsheet a little bit different, but in short, right now, and I saw a spreadsheet from them the other day that was a little bit more updated, we are about 39,000, not 31, but that box in yellow shows how much beyond the contingency that we are from where they were. But you have to remember that first off, that total number includes the entire ticket booth of like, I think 160 whatever. So if you said, well, don't count the ticket booth, where are we relative to what was originally approved? We are under that dollar amount by over 100. Does that make sense? And then the last piece is that you have to remember you're getting revenue for the ticket booth. Now, whether or not it matches and all that, that's another conversation, but I'm just saying you have to understand the pieces of the puzzle and the time at which they happened, because again, there was no ticket booth at this time. And there is, and it is reflected now at this time. So are we within the contingency? Sean asked me that question the other day, or Steve via email. So yes, depending on how you want to talk about it, am I technically over? Are we over? Yes. Eddie did not make all those decisions. The list of the contingencies, if you go through that spreadsheet, sorry, not contingencies, the change orders, if you said, where'd this one come from? I'd say, I don't know, we have to look back, see who actually approved that one. But these lists are all the contingencies that got approved. I know at one point we were digging up lines, we had water things that broke, we've, learned things that we didn't know that were buried under the ground, so on and so forth. I think that's the only one that we actually saved money on, sadly. The rest of them were all ads. But again, in total, that is how you can go through the sheet. That's how you can see what they are. This trench drain business, that was, I remember that being a discussion. It was almost 10 grand, and I remember them talking about it one day when, obviously when Bob was still here. That was fairly early on in the project. Just because, again, of all the runoff that was going to be created and where it was going and what they thought would happen versus what was actually able to happen. And I want to say the parking lot was kind of flooding at the time too, and we were like, hey, you know, maybe we should rethink that because we're ending up with like a second Lake Minocqua out there. Yeah.
In your report, you provided us with pictures of things that need to be repaired or fixed.
Yep.
Have we paid in full or have we held?
So in this sheet, sorry, I'm going to slide down just a little bit over. These are the pay applications show like what have we actually cut checks for, or are we in the process of cutting checks for. So you scroll to the bottom. I just cut, yeah, this is pretty much where we're at. I just cut one of the checks that's included in that number, but there's around a little less than 300,000 to go. So we are sitting on money because they are not 100% done yet. I also included that punch list that Joe, Jose, and I kind of did some walkthrough with Jim Ostrom from POB. So there's a number of things yet to finish. Some of them are going to have to wait till the temperature gets a little warmer. The door on the ticket booth has to get painted yet. Can't do it when it's 40 out, right? So same thing with like some of the grass out by the fence where the decorative fence is. They will be waiting for snow to melt and some warmer weather. So there are some things yet to go, but they are in a good place with in terms of operation. I believe the last piece to be functional for the first girls soccer game next week is the cable that has to go into the press box so that all the headsets and everything works. But that was, when you look at change orders, that was a process in itself. Kind of how we went about it, and you know, at the time, the thought was like save money, don't call. For example, I don't know if you guys remember talking about Aero Audio. Maybe not. Either way, Aero Audio was in the original at one point. I remember them talking about it because Aero is like, you know, kind of the gold standard for installation of things like projectors and sound and theater systems, and like that, it's their thing. That's what they make a living doing. Low voltage in particular. So we ended up not doing that. We were like, well, the electricians can put it in. We did. They did. It had problems. It had interference. It had range limitations and other issues. So we did. We had to make some change orders so that you could actually run graduation out in the field and have it not, you know, make everybody's ears bleed from that high-pitched speaking sound. So, but we are in a good place with it, and it should work really nice. Jose took it, I think, all the way over to the baseball field. So the range should be more than adequate at this point, and there's multiple headsets. So again, when they're doing graduation, multiple people can be wearing a headset, speaking, and do what they do, as well as possibly like a referee or whatever up to the booth. So that should be cool.
Okay.
And I don't know if you can answer this, or POB's got to answer it. Is that as close as they come to matching up that siding with our brick? A gray siding and a brown brick, light brown brick. That
Are you
looks
talking
like they
about the-
use it from.
Are you talking about the ticket booth?
Yeah, ticket booth.
So the metal siding for the ticket booth and the brick was chosen to kind of sort of bridge the gap between what we put in the building and what was on the current building. Like, it wasn't necessarily an attempt to match brick and steel. It was trying to tie some of our existing pieces with our current existing pieces.
It just looks
All of the grout, though, I will say, because you brought up the
I
grout
saw that,
originally,
yeah, it looks
that
good.
cleaned up really nice. The
It did.
color is uniform, and all the white stuff is
Yeah.
gone, so the temperature and their washing it has done good for that.
On the practice field, at the facilities committee meeting, what was discussed is that they tore up that field.
Yep.
And then they put it back the best they could, but it's very unlevel and it's weeds and not grass.
Yep.
Is that part of?
They put grass seed out there, but again, like if it's not super maintained, you gotta aerate it, you gotta, like whatever, Joe can talk about all that, but at the end of the day, it's a lot of work to maintain nice grass in northern Wisconsin. I think we all know that. And when they took the water system out, that was about a $90,000 or $100,000 decision to save some money, which again may be valid, but that's gonna be the natural outcome of not having lush grass that fills in some of the unevenness and so on and so forth.
But that part is all done then, I mean, they're not coming
It
back
is,
to.
unless we told them we want to put a sprinkler system in.
Right, yeah.
They left, I believe, like there is connections out there should a future board or whatever decide to. But it did not get reinstalled because again, it was about $100,000 to have them do that. So.
What
Yeah.
about the heat in the concession stand?
Same discussion. It was originally in there. It was then later reduced. So there is no heat. It can be added. It is where it currently is, but it is done. And I did bring up to Lisa at one point for next month, like it might be a really nice opportunity to take at one of the board meetings and just do a tour with you guys. You know, I know there's some pieces to the puzzle that people may not be satisfied with, but I'll tell you what, when you take a walk out there, it's a gorgeous facility. Joe put some beautiful like cages in there. I was like a little nervous myself. I'm like, well, we put cages in, it's gonna look like we took this, you know, beautiful thing and kind of like made it ugly. It's gorgeous. It's accessible. It's very well able to be managed by Emily as they go down the road of trying to organize things. And on top of that, obviously, like when you're in the bleachers and you're looking down, it's like that is a heck of a system to watch a game from, or graduation, or whatever you choose. So it is light years ahead of where we were, and it's quite the structure. But there's a lot of pieces that went into making it. So tour is up to you guys.
Relative to the heating, you know, we talked about that here at the board meeting, and I also talked to one of the beginnings. You know, they said putting a drop-down system in, you know, into your concession stand and bathrooms is not expensive. Have we researched any bids on that?
We haven't, I think we need to realize that we don't have any gas in that building.
Well, he was talking electric.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, electric.
You have a 37-member committee doing whatever they do right now, so I don't think like anybody's researching to hurry up. Like you got school safety issues that probably take some priority over whether or not you're heating your concession.
Well, I'm just saying that, okay, that we don't host, if we have the right to host a football playoff game, we don't do it because we don't have, you know, heated facilities. That should be later in the year. I mean, I'm just, and the same thing with soccer, you know,
Yep.
so. And,
Either way, the things that can be done, right? Like we're not back in the corner stuff, not that we can't do it. It's just a matter of prioritizing the money that you have and deciding what comes first. And getting it taken care of. But like I said, when you take a walk out there, some of those details aside, it is a gorgeous building. It's awesome for our staff. It's awesome for our kids. And when you're looking at graduation and the sunset, I think you're going to find it a pretty enjoyable evening. So.
Yeah, and I guess I would just now, like as far as the practice field is level and as nice as it was designed. Again, I'm not real sure where the unlevel part of it comes in, other than over towards Navy Road and a little bit of the drainage by the parking lots. Other than that, it's half a football field. It was done pretty well, figured out pretty well, it's out pretty nice.
We had to shrink it too, if you recall, because of making sure that we had enough turnaround space to get vehicles and equipment in and out of that building. So originally it cut into where it once was.
Sure.
So, and it slid it over.
And I think as far as, you know, electrical heaters, Sean, to your point, pretty inexpensive, right? Not great in the long run, but pretty inexpensive. There is 2 8-inch sleeves that run underneath the laptop there. I guess my thought on that is if you want to put gas in the building, you don't necessarily asphalt. And if you want to get water running out of that mechanical room for an irrigation system, we can certainly do that. Those 2 sleeves. There is still the original section
far as for watering, I think they said that you have a walking watering system, right? It just goes on top of the turf and it waters the field.
No, that one's in the bowl. That's also 29 years old. And now is that possible? It's possible. I don't think it's probably a great solution. Moving that thing from one end of the property to the other. But it's a possibility.
Thank you, Pat. Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
Real quick, just again, the ticket booth thing is up there, and then if you guys have things too, this was that punch list. And like I said, they went through and did a pretty thorough walkthrough, so that's what they'll be finishing up and try to get squared away so that we can quote unquote be done and wrap this up. But the reality is the final piece probably won't be done until May by the time they lay the grass, paint the door, and have some good temperature to do those things. So.
Thank you, Ed.
Yep.
Next on the agenda is board committee and board liaison reports. Any board members attend any conferences that they need to share? Okay. Charter school meetings, I was not able to attend the last Lakeland Area Consortium on Autism. And I don't have notes for you. I asked for the tape recording of the meeting, and I didn't get it. So, and then you also see the draft minutes. Neither Lisa or I were at the last one for the Star School. Policy committee.
Policy met, and there were changes made to 4 policies that you see in your packet that we'll be approving a little bit later, having to do with food service, wellness, free and reduced meals, and competitive food sales. They were all suggested changes from Neola. We are still working on the facilities committee because we want to have input from Joe and from Emily, since they have to deal with a lot of the requests and the aftermath of people using the buildings. So we have a special policy meeting scheduled on the 9th of this month just to deal with facilities.
There's a motion in the packet. Right here.
Right. So I need a motion to approve the following policies as recommended by the policy committee. Policy numbers 8500, 8510, 8531, and 8550. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next is the ad hoc facilities task team committee.
I've been talking too much.
No, that's,
Well, I wasn't at the last meeting,
Oh.
so.
Last meeting we spent, same as the, what month am I in? March meeting was the same as February, where we took 2 sections, divided into 2 different groups, and we went through and prioritized in each of the 2 sections. Wednesday night, we'll take the last 2 sections, start looking at those and prioritizing those. Hopefully, if we stay on task and people are productive, we'll get through it. But they're both much longer lists and more subjective. When we start talking about educational adequacy and what we need to do for learning spaces within the building. People tend to get, we need a roof, we need a generator. Those were pretty cut and dry conversations. When you start getting into conversations about remodeling classrooms, it becomes a little bit more subjective. From we need to update our learning spaces to it was good enough for me, why isn't it good enough for my kids? So you're going to get all of those opinions. That's coming up on Wednesday.
okay, very good, thank you. Next is consent agenda items. Any items that people want to pull?
Yes, would you move 7.4 under 8? If we are to approve it or accept it, that's an action.
Okay.
I would like to discuss it.
Okay,
I'd like clarification on 7.35, attorney filter.
anybody else? Okay. I need a motion to approve consent agenda items except for 7.35 and 7.4 as presented. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Ward? Mr. Schaub?
Yes.
Mrs. Fink?
Yes.
Mrs. Knoll? Mrs. Schumann? Yes. Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Almond?
Yes. Okay, 7.35, May 7th, 10th journey class, Interstate State Park, St. Croix Falls, Wisconsin.
Can anybody answer what 3 days of the St. Croix? Is there a special campground over there or something?
They've typically had a spring climbing trip to Tetigooch on the northwest shore of Lake Superior, and so because of travel costs and things like that, they try to find a closer location to do the same thing that they've done traditionally every year in the spring. And so they chose St. Croix Falls because Interstate Park has a lot of climbing area along the dells of the St. Croix River.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
It's a pretty park.
Mhm. The oldest state park in Wisconsin.
Is it really? Very
Okay, 7.4, the Howard Young Foundation donation.
I think it's absolutely wonderful that they want to donate that. I have a question. I really question whether or not 349,000 is going to cover 4 positions. And if we are going to approve hiring 4 positions, and the 349,000 does not cover those positions, where is the extra money coming from? And after the 3 years, are those 4 speech therapists assuming that they're going to continue in their jobs, and then who pays for them after the 3 years?
Great question.
Is there something in the contract that I have the same thing time frame after that 3-year trial? Because ultimately, those speech pathologists are not being used here at Lakeland.
Correct.
The concept is they will be at the elementary with early
Correct.
intervention inside the classroom, with an immersion therapy type service. I will say from the meeting that I attended, that was discussed, 100% reimbursement. Concept is wonderful. I think the struggle, and I don't want to summarize too briefly, but part of the struggle was, can all of you all afford that kind of immersive therapy? Howard Young Foundation came through with the grant. We're the fiscal agent, so because we're the fiscal agent, the donation would come to us. We would fund them through STAR, and then STAR through Jen and Steph would supervise them, and they would actually be placed at the elementary. I don't have clear answers on if you divide out the 349,000 by 4 positions. I think you're going to struggle to hire at that rate. I think you're also going to struggle to hire 4 speech-language pathologists, so I'm less concerned about the money at this time. In the donation, there's also an evaluation component that is tied into the conclusion of year 3.
So if the elementary schools choose not to continue on with that speech pathologist, where do we stand with that? Because we're going to consider in the contract.
If the elementary, I won't be here. If the donation ends, then you would have a non-renewal, because we're not going to keep paying for elementary speech pathologists that are not functioning building within our country.
I think it'd be wonderful to approve this with the stipulation that there is something written in the contract that there's a clear understanding of where the money is going to come from if there are 4 hired and there is not enough money. I don't really believe that a high school should be paying for therapists at the elementary school. I can see why we need this, it's wonderful, but a high school shouldn't be responsible.
We would need just a motion to approve it, but we can put that stipulation in your motion to approve the hiring. Or do you, so if we're gonna change the motion to
Well,
accept it.
we have another portion in the staffing plan to approve the hire.
So can we at that time then say to work out
With the details to be,
what details to be worked out? Yeah, okay, let's.
With a written stipulation that LUHS doesn't have a loss or that there's no cost to LUHS.
Steve, is there gonna be a discussion about possibility of not finding for, not finding for $7.2? Is there any discussion about having 2, they're split between 2 schools? Or is the version of the right sense that you need one person?
My sense that the version is going to be much more effective if you have a dedicated speech therapist, to a specific school and a specific curriculum. I would bet that Jen and the directors at the elementaries will have those discussions when they get to the process of hiring.
Okay, I guess you're approving this, but I think we need, they would be reactionary. With that, they can find more people.
And I think the elementary schools will have to make that decision. Because that's
My sense is we're just going to have one fiscal agent to facilitate the 4 SLPs for the elementary, and then the actual day-to-day will be Jen, staff, and 4 directors at the elementaries. Is that your kind of understanding?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there are some elementaries that are able to provide speech therapy today than other schools. So, I mean, I think everybody wants one, but some have very limited services. Yes.
And conceptually, the letter's fantastic, right? And
Yeah.
I'm guessing there's a second piece to this, maybe Jen is privy to, as it comes to, there's a lot of questions that come up, like, what if the 349
Mhm.
is enough for 3? Is this an all or nothing? Do we have to have 4? Do we go back? Is there a second step? Is there a negotiation to say this is what we found out? Here's where the market is. We can get 3, and these are the schools that want to have them, and maybe share, like you said, Dee.
I truly believe we have to go back. I mean, we had an SLP position open all last summer and got nothing. So I feel we have to see what we can even get and then determine how to use it. If we need to go back to Howard Young, then we go back to them and say, here's what's happening.
Good, I'm glad to hear that. So what are the mechanics of the date? Do we accept this?
Yep. Yeah, so.
Can I ask a question before we move forward with that? I mean, one of the bullet points for them is the schools will self-fund the 4 speech therapists after the 3-year trial is completed. Again, you say, okay, non-contract renewal, but this says we will self-fund them. What are our requirements to self-fund?
Well, when it says schools, I'm reading that as multiple.
Except that for the fact that this is really a contract with us, with LUHS through STAR. So I mean, I know that those people are going to the schools, but again, that's the bullet point that I get a little bit stuck on because we're relying on the schools to want to self-fund. So what is our requirement of self-funding them after the 3-year period is completed?
I think that would be included in your motion with the written stipulation.
Perfect. That's what I'm getting at, is that I don't
No loss to
want to
LUHS.
approve it unless we know what that, after that 3-year term looks like.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? All right, first we need a motion to approve the May 7th through 10th journey class interstate park trip.
I'll make that.
second. All in
Lisa
favor?
can make the motion, I'll make the second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, next we need a motion to approve the Color Young donation for speech therapists.
With the stipulations.
No, this is just to
When we get
accept.
to the higher.
Ah,
That's,
okay.
that's what we, just to accept the donation.
Second.
Okay, roll call please.
Mr. Bortz?
Aye.
Mr. Traub?
Yes.
Mrs. Fink?
Yes.
Mrs. Knoll?
I'm struggling with this, the post portion being a part of the compensation plan. So, I mean, are you saying that that post part is going to be discussed in the compensation?
When we get to the compensation plan, we're going to have to approve for SLPs.
It's part of the staffing plan for next fiscal period. Is that
You're
right?
asking whether that third bullet point will be addressed in that portion.
Where are the stipulations?
Correct.
It's gonna be in the motion. We don't know what those stipulations actually will be, other than what's in the
How can we approve
motion.
something when we don't have to, we don't know what
Because
this is?
we will have a motion to approve the addition of 4 speech language pathologists with written stipulations that there is no loss to LUHS.
Okay.
That's a future motion underneath staffing. This is just a motion to accept the donation.
We're gonna accept the donation
Okay.
and
Yes,
approve
sorry.
the positions.
Is that?
Yes.
Okay. Mrs. Schuman? Yes. Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Pack?
Yes.
Mr. Almond?
Yes. Okay, next is to approve Deny Start College Now and Early College Credit Program applications.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Well, I guess that was part, I'm sorry, I meant. That was
Oh, it
part of-
was, it
Yeah.
was sound.
Okay, all right, thank you. Action items. Review approved treasurer's report and monthly financials.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, motion to approve the procurement card transactions from February 1st, 25 to February 28th, 25. Motion has been made and seconded. Roll call, please.
Mr. Traub?
Yes.
Mrs. Fink? Mrs. Knoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Schuman? Yes. Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Pack?
Yes.
Mr. Bortz? Mr. Almond?
Yes. Okay, a motion to approve the financial audit reports for Lakeland Union High School and the Lakeland Star Academy for year ending June 30th, 2024, as presented by the audit firm.
Can we make a pause?
Here.
I don't know if we actually approve an audit or do we accept the audit.
You're approving the
We-
acceptance. You're doing both. The word approve should be in there. Because if you don't approve it, we need to file disagreements and go through a different process.
How many of you have had a chance to go through it?
Look through.
Got it?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure everybody's had a chance to.
Is there, okay, I need a first.
Motion.
Okay, and a second? Okay, discussion. Do you have any concerns from what you saw?
No, I don't.
Okay.
But I want to make sure that, you're not getting the audit report in.
We got rid of 4 or 5 findings this year, if I recall.
We still always have the internal control. We'll always have that.
They weren't fighting that one. I feel like the last one they were dinking around with a little bit was, what do you call it? Capital assets. There was like 1 piece left or something maybe, but we were dogging it a little bit because it's like one of the final pieces that's like a long-standing item that needed an overhaul. And so I overhauled. Lisa had a big, long, nice spreadsheet that had everything in it. But there's some calculations and things that need to come out of that spreadsheet, and that's kind of what I overhauled and built into it. So now as we go through and we add items to it, it should hopefully go faster and go smoother because they were having to dig up some of those calculations, but also we had items on there that were not in compliance with current policy. So for example, something about 20 years ago that like we may have capitalized a computer on, you don't capitalize computers anymore. They're like supplies because you go through them in 3 years and they're junk. So plus we've actually set a threshold now at $5,000. There is no computer we are buying that is $5,000 per unit. So again, like now that we've updated those lists and so on and so forth. Yeah, they're in a pretty good place with how that's gonna look going forward.
Yeah, I wondered if we would need policy, if we would need to look at the fund balance policy and the capital asset policy, because they were saying that our policies
We'll
need to
be
be updated.
we'll be doing a re-eval. I updated them, and those were old policies, like they're updated already. So, and we had a conversation at one
When
point
you
of like
update?
the fund balance policy. Like it used to say something about cash flow borrowing. We had a conversation, like as a board at one point, I forget exactly when, but we set a percentage, and that's what they wanted. And I want to say we set like 30 or 25 or some. I'd have to go back
That
and
was a
look.
couple of years ago, or over a year ago. I would
It's
say.
somewhere around a
Yeah,
year or
that's
thereabouts, last summer maybe, I
Yeah.
forget, but again, like it is updated. They're good with it because it matches their original request to have an actual threshold, but we'll check against it
I
as we
thought they were
post it.
saying we didn't have that.
We didn't originally. The original finding was we didn't have a percentage. It just said we don't want to cash flow borrow.
Right.
And so we've since put a percentage in there. I have to go back and find out when we did it, but it's,
I think we did.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
it's in there. I had to show it to him to talk him out of it. So-
Okay.
Lisa, you have the first and second?
Yep.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Very good. We need a motion to approve the contracts and letters as presented for the 25-26 school year.
Do you have specifics you'd like pulled, reviewed?
Would you like us to make anything more, make it more friendly? Like, we can do that. I could solicit the help of people that are good at friendliness to do that. It might be Lisa, I'm not gonna lie. It just might be her, but we could do that.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Opposed?
Peggy, it's great that you go through all of that like that.
Yeah, thank you.
Magnifying glasses.
It's a cross-reference.
Thank you.
Okay, next is to approve the staffing plan for the 25-26 as presented by administration.
Do you have that up on the screen, or can you, or?
Ken, Kimmy, yeah.
What's your bad?
Well, I'll just snag
I
Eddie.
got a half.
Oh, then you just go.
The other second.
Where am I starting? Right here.
Or you could,
I could do it if you want to.
We were in class A, no, we were in Division 1, no.
the input changed. Did you change the input? Or did it just do it on its own?
Oh, if it did that, it did it. Well, it should be like plug in the cable.
We did.
But it's like, this is a different, like, HDMI.
I switched from Jose's to mine originally, and it just
There you
worked.
go. That's good.
Okay.
So maybe you don't need all those pictures.
Well, we can, so this is the beginning of this. What you're seeing is exactly what we presented to you last. And so it's just the beginning, we just added on to it. So that's what you're seeing. He's gonna fly through some of that.
Yeah, just sharing our process, like I said, all information you've seen before. Pieces of the puzzle, just the different parts that we talked about. Enrollment projections, some of the department trends, where we need FTEs. We'll come back to some of these points as we go through that. Jen had talked about workload in terms of how we code that for special education, where we were at, where we're looking to move to. So as we move into coaching pieces there.
So if you, two more, keep going. Here you go.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, these are the highlights that was shared in the document, and really, as Levi said, a recap of what we presented at the February meeting. I'm just looking to see if there's any, we tried to elaborate a little bit on some of the administrative actions or things that we considered as we were going through the process. So certainly we're looking at the number of course sections based on those student registrations. We compare those requests to our current staffing and licensures. And we talked about this last time, how it's kind of like this, it's like a Jenga puzzle, right? Like, I mean, we really have to look at our staff and think about, we've got a few people with dual licensures and that plays a role. And so we try to think about how we can best utilize the staff that we have. So we gave the example of like, we've talked about our family consumer science increase in course requests. So we were able to look at how we could move our financial literacy courses. That financial literacy can be taught in 3 departments. It can be taught in family consumer science, it can be taught in social studies, or it could be taught as business. And it has lived in different places. Utilizing the staff we have, we could move it to social studies. It's currently in FCS this year, but that allows us to meet all of the family consumer science requests and then use a dually licensed teacher in social studies full-time as opposed to partially in ELA and get us that instructional coach position that we talked about. So I just wanted to illustrate like how many pieces there are that we're considering as we do that.
And we'll show it with a visual on another slide coming up here too. One of the things with it too is, and this is a continued process concern for us, is that we need to have staff that have full 1.0 FTEs. It's hard for us to hire part-time teachers where we're at. Cost of living is already high for people in this area, but then to hire people that will come here for part-time jobs is not going to be very high. And so we're trying to do our best to make sure we can fit the pieces together, that we have whole people in places, that it honors them with a full contract and gives them the opportunity to be made whole. We also went through that process and identified course sections that we had low registration numbers in and made sure that those courses the student enrollments were moved because those courses weren't going to run, and then to where those students would move to on that basis, because if they're registered for a class and we take that class away, they will end up somewhere else. And then obviously everything aligns to like the greater vision of like where's it all going? How does it all tie into our plans in terms of refining our approaches to providing intervention for our students that struggle and need to support, to help accelerate learning, but also to help get kids up to grade level content. And then obviously we've talked a little bit about this with you, our goal to provide instructional coaching so that our staff can continue to grow and be the best that they can be. Had a conversation, we work with CISA through different pieces of growth for both our school and for our administrative team. And on Friday, one of those conversations tied back to, I had asked one of the CISA reps, when I first started going through my admin license, I had asked this of people I had interviewed, because we had to do this as an assignment, what's the greatest impact that a principal makes on a building? I had asked this of multiple administrators, and the consistent voice from all of them was the hiring and firing of staff. That's your biggest impact you make. And I had raised that kind of question in conversation, and one of the CISA people said, he goes, I would agree with you that 20 years ago that probably was 100% truthful, but because of the decreasing of our pools of applicants, helping to coach the staff that you currently have and train the people you have on board is probably getting to be more and more important, because you have less and less people to choose from. And so at some point in time, you're going to have to really do a great job of growing the people you have in the positions that you have and supporting new people as they come in as well. So that's all part of our process and going through and thinking about that.
I highlighted the school psychologist part. We talked about it in February, but when the staffing plan that was uploaded, like when we went through and just double checked some things, we just didn't have that bullet on there for you. So we had talked about it before, but in the uploaded document it wasn't there, and I just wanted to point out that that is part of the plan. It's just, we were looking at instructional staff when we created the document for the packet, and
that was
didn't really consider psychologist instructional staff.
If you remember back to last year, that was something we were going to try for this year in going to one day for school psych. much to what Levi just talked about, no one wants to come here for a .2 position unless they're retired and, you know, living in the perfect area and everything aligns. It did not. We have someone virtually, and it is not proving to work very well for our students or our staff. And so I feel like we tried it, and we need to improve our student body right now, but to improve like how we service these students, we need to not go back to what we were, but half-time for sure.
We had 3 unfilled positions in the plan that was approved last year at this time when we went through. We had an ELA teacher that resigned, as mentioned before in the meeting, resigned with weeks before the school year started. We were unable to find any candidates. Nobody applied for the postings that were out there. We lost a Voyager teacher about a month into the school year who resigned from the position, and then we had an unfilled case manager position as well. And in going through that process, we just look at that. Those are places where we had a need already last year that we ran kind of below the numbers that we needed to this year. The conversation was out there about the need to make sure that we have adequate space to do the process of filling the need for our student requests. In our family consumer science room, our second room has all the lab spaces available there. It just does not have the oven stoves. And so there's some Carl Perkins thought process that has come into it. Like that's what the intention of that is to fill the needs for our students in those technical education areas. This is a big one too, and it kind of ties a little bit into what Lisa was talking about before, is like how requests are going up. Part of it is kids are choosing more classes because they don't see the need for some of the study hall time as much. I look at that as a huge benefit because we're placing kids in an area where they're actually getting academic instruction, as opposed to sometimes the study halls and the learning labs were a little bit less driven, focused areas. And our kids are seeing the ability that they have to be able to get the work done that they need to get done, but also to be able to take some classes that can help balance their schedule and give them some more opportunities going through that. We continue to see an increased interest in work-based learning opportunities. This is also trying to meet a need that our community continues to tell us they need our students to help support the businesses in this community. And by our kids getting opportunities to work in these jobs as a part of their academic plan in high school, it's setting them up for future success in the areas where they potentially be working for the rest of their lifetime in this community. Physical education courses increased a bit as well. We changed some of the course offerings to make it a little bit more diverse because we felt that our offerings were a little bit antiquated to just this traditional FIAD games, to make it more a little bit of lifestyle fitness that could match some of the different needs that our students have to help promote healthy living. Physical health is just as important as mental health for our kids, and we need to provide them with opportunities moving forward. And Jen had already spoke to this in the last time about the increased workload need that we have for our students with disabilities that are coming in versus the students that we had on our caseloads this year. So from our standpoint, we kind of went through and broke down the numbers to show this in a little bit more of a visual way. There's another piece that shows it as well. The category column will talk about just kind of the departmental area, the subject-based area that we're looking at. FY24 number of teaching staff approved. This is what we had came to the board with last year with what we needed to fill the need to support all the different class requests and the academic needs that we had. The FY24 is what our budget ran at, right? Because that's the positions that were unfilled. When Eddie presents that budget in October, he has a more clearer picture than we have right now, which Steve talked about before. So that number ran at 49.9 versus the 53.4. And then our FY25 proposed, based upon requests as we've gone through and our desire to support coaching for our staff members and the needs that we have of our student body coming in, it is technically a one or less than a one-person position increase from what we were proposing last year. Anything else you guys in that area? Visual graphic we didn't put on it. Okay. Yeah, gotcha.
I don't have a pretty visual graphic.
Not yet.
Levi, we made a position administrative to assist with the coaching. So you feel an additional full-time staff member? I know you're going to probably do, you know, what was it? There would be half-time coaching for certain disciplines like math and.
So our coaching positions are going to be instructional coaches, cross-categorical, that would work
Okay.
with any staff members in any areas. The reason why it breaks down the way it does is because there's also, from our standpoint, is there's not a great way to place it as to this is just one human. It's actually parts of humans because of the fitting the needs of where half FTEs come into place in different department areas. And so we don't have great duly licensed people between some of these places that we could say, oh, well, if we have a person who could both teach us math and some English at the same time, then we'd fill that need to split that. Like some of those combinations don't work well. So these coaching positions are actually give us a double benefit. It allows us to have 1.0 FTEs for people, but also to provide support from our staff with people who are on board veterans of our staff that can provide some great instruction for their colleagues going through.
Well, it's going to equal just a one full-time employee.
Essentially, it'll equal a little bit less than one full-time employee in that overall picture for us, but it adds 3.5 positions of coaches for us. So 3 different people will have a portion of their schedule working with and supporting our staff. Yes.
And Barb had asked the question earlier, how does our staffing stay the same or go up and down when our student population goes down? And the great answer is if I had 20 kids that were all seniors and they were all science majors, I can cut some classes. The problem is our numbers go down, but I'll lose 2 or 3 kids that are freshmen, 2 or 3 kids, and then their course requests or their personal educational path is going to be different. So it's not like I'm losing sections of kids. I'm losing here and there in tatters. And that's coming back to what Levi said is I don't need as many sections or full-time sections in social studies or an ELA, which allows me to free up a 0.3 or a 0.5 person to now become an instructional coach. So that's kind of how that whole big picture fits together. Eddie will be the first one to say, and I don't disagree, when you look at the numbers in the budget, can you flip back one? Yeah. The actual FTE growth is pretty significant. It's like 0.7, 0.4, or point whatever. So when we frame it as we are looking for a very similar staffing plan for 25, 26 as you approved for 24, 25. The reality is we didn't actually fill all of those positions. So then as we get into the budget development, those budget dollars are reallocated away from personnel into other areas. So going back up into that 54.1, that's again a shift of dollars. So you can look at it as a budget increase. It actually will be a budgeted increase from fiscal year 24 to fiscal year 25. Or you play the game, and this is being totally upfront, that, well, this is what you approved for the year anyway, so it shouldn't be that much of an increase. But one of the reasons we looked at showing the numbers in this way is, yes, this is what we planned for this year. That didn't happen. This is what we ended up doing. But going forward, we'd like to be where we should have been for this year, but it will have this, I don't know if it's an additional cost, but a shift in costing to personnel. Did I say that in a way that was fair to everybody?
I think so.
No, because we spun this in, I don't know how many hours as a core admin we spent going around that. What's the right way to look at this?
questions, concerns? Okay, motion to approve the staffing plan for the 25-26 as presented by administration. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Knoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Schuman? Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Bortz? Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mrs. Fink? Yes. Mr. Allen?
Yes. Then we need a motion to approve the addition of 4 speech and language pathologists with written stipulations that there is no loss to LUHS.
During during the course of the
At-
contract.
yeah.
They just said no.
No loss.
There is no
Yep.
loss, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did I have first and Sue?
Yeah.
Barb was first? Barb was first. Second. Lisa second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Bortz? Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mrs. Fink? Yes. Mrs. Knoll? Mrs. Schuman? Yes. Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next is to review and approve employee benefit changes for 25-26.
Is that all listed in one, there's like one big pile, or is it like?
Yeah, there's a
they're
huge
separate?
motion that I'll be reading.
Or there should be separate motions, but,
Oh,
there are 3 separate on the
Okay.
agenda. Sorry, I
It's
just
just
can't, I can't see it,
one
but,
here, but.
okay, which one is first? Delta?
Dental motion.
Delta, okay, let's start with Delta.
Now, before he gets into too much detail, the co-op with the Lakeland Area Consortium, I have not seen in the last 10 years any insurance co-op running at the rates these guys are. So when you look at 0% increases, I'm used to coming from an area where you're looking at 9 to 12, some districts in the 20s. Districts I know that were at 30% renewals. So what were we looking at? Was it 4? Maybe?
Hold on, which button did you, or what happened when, it's probably doing the same thing. Yeah, it's weird, because when I switched from Jose, it just did it, but apparently now when we do it, it changes it. Okay. And blow this up.
Now, before you jump into that, Eddie.
Yeah.
I remember reading that you wanted to increase HSA benefits by $100 for a single, $200 for a family.
Hold on, wait, are we doing health or are we doing dental?
You're doing that.
No, before
Okay.
you jump into this, I remember reading that we were gonna be doing that. We're not doing that tonight.
Yes.
No.
That was a,
It's on the next page.
It's like an option.
it was an option.
It's not something you have to do tonight by any means. It's just an option. It's listed on there and it's an awareness piece.
It was an option.
Right before 8.7. It's a line above it.
Okay, that's, I don't have that. I don't have that on my agenda.
Cool.
Can I talk? I pulled that from the agenda.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I think your HSA and your compensation should be discussed in total comp. We're not
Right.
going to a total comp package yet.
Okay, so we're doing dental.
Right.
Dental.
Okay, so in short, there's 2 versions of the renewal there. M3 is the brokerage. We're working with them the same way we always have. No changes in that regard. They do a nice job. I think everybody at the table, everybody being all 5 schools are happy with them. Again, they do a good job and bring us the information, educating everybody on what they need to be up to speed on. Did I put the? Yes, sorry, okay. So in short, we're gonna look at doing self-funded is the recommendation tonight. So when you talk self-funded, people kind of go from like 0 to 60 and it's like panic a little bit. I want you to understand that dental is nothing like health. You don't get like cancer and have $1 million claims. The notion of dental is basically funded almost like just a capped benefit. It is not this thing that has a long list of coverages and it doesn't have any limitations on cost. That would be more like health insurance. So basically we do a $1,500 per belly button benefit, so to speak. So if I'm a family of 4, each person in my family of 4, me, my wife, my 2 kids, each has a $1,500 benefit. That's how it functions. I don't care if somebody needs 6 root canals, we only pay $1,500 because that's what the policy says. And again, that's on a per person basis. So seeing as that's how it operates, you can do self-funded without having a massive amount of people. You can do self-funded because you really know very closely what the maximum losses can be. Since we've been with M3, they keep a nice, I'm going to call it an abbreviated version of our historical dental data. So long story short, we can really see nicely where we're running, which is also tied into our renewals, and that's why we keep getting zeros for the most part, because we're not running higher than what it was calculated to be. So long story short, the claims, I think people get like, again, the notion of self-funding scares people, but then the question comes of like, well, who's going to process the claims, and is everyone going to know who got a root canal and all that? Delta does 2 books of business. Delta does dental insurance on a fully insured level. They also do self-funded, meaning they serve as the TPA or the third-party administrator, so that like they will process the claim. So, you know, if I go in and have a root canal, when Lorinda pays the bill, she won't know that. Okay, like it's still all private. It's all that is maintained via the HIPAA regs at Delta. All that happens from a billing standpoint is we go through, we run a payroll. Every person who I run a payroll for has a deduction because they pay part of that premium, and there's a district piece that goes towards paying that premium. Both of them funnel into a liability account, and it just sits there, and when the bill comes, Lorinda cuts a check out of the liability account. It is the exact same process. The only difference is that right now, when Lorinda cuts a check, it's because we've agreed to a set payment with a fully insured carrier that says, for everybody who's on a family plan, you pay this. Everybody in a single, you pay that. When you go self-funded, that goes to the wayside, and you say, we'll pay whatever the bill was. Send us the bill. Now, once school's in session, September, October, November, like everybody's working. So you're going to see very little bit of claims rolling through because most people are working and they don't take time off to go do their dental appointments because they don't want to use the time off. At the same time, you'll see the summer bills be larger because when people are off, or there's Christmas break, or their kiddos are home from college and it's winter break, whatever, you'll see bills go up. So you have a little bit of a difference like in the cash flow of it, but again, the overall limit and risk on claims is pretty fixed. And so what we're saying is we were offered a chance to go and decrease the premium. We're saying don't decrease it, let it stay exactly where it is, do a 0% increase, and that'll also kind of buy us a little insurance to make sure that we come out on top, and then that's it. At the end of the year, when there's money left in that liability account that we didn't use, you have to report it on your books a little different, and it goes in a fund off to the side to say, this is our accrual of self-funded liability, so to speak. If you ever get rid of self-funded insurance, you have a claims run-out period, and you would essentially use the funds that were sitting there that were accumulated, hopefully, to pay that out. And again, in the case of dental, it's pretty darn safe and guaranteed. So that's basically what we're proposing, but again, it's not like you go self-funded and magically save $1 bajillion. You have to look at the total risk you have. We are probably looking at saving a couple of percent and being able to save that each year and not paying it out to dental. But again, over time, that should help us either buy down more premium because we don't have to pay some, for example, like when Delta, bills us, they're a business, they have to pay tax, for example. We don't have to pay tax. We're a school, so that helps right off the top, lower some of those costs. So that's kind of where we're at. Talk about it endlessly, but that's the short story on it.
So based upon past experience, you're figuring that this is going to save, what, 10, 20,000?
I don't think it's going to be that much, quite frankly. Again, I think we're looking at around a total of 150 grand a year in total dental premium, both between the employees and the district.
So maybe 5.
Somewhere around there, yeah. And again, like you save that money, that's your cushion if you have a little bit of a quote-unquote bad year, but it's still capped. There's still only so far that you go, and like the topic summary sheet says, I will probably set up a tracker. So it's kind of like the food service tracker, it's like the cash flow tracker, like we're gonna kind of watch that like a hawk and see where we go and use that to kind of adjust our own premiums. But again, the cool thing is there, when you adjust your own premiums, you're gonna benefit from it. Let's say that at some point we go from a $1,500 benefit to $1,000 benefit. Like when we make that change, that is not money that's gonna be magically lost somewhere in Delta. It's going to be here if we make that change. If we decide we're not gonna reduce it and we want to, at some point, have a different conversation so that we, don't get stuck in Delta's actual contract. There are other TPAs that do dental TPA work. We're just gonna start with dental, or with Delta, because they are like the biggest network in Wisconsin. They're taking the most places, so on and so forth. But again, we don't have the option to explore unless you're self-funded. And that's what self-funded does for you. It gives you those other options.
Are the L's going to be striving for self-funding as well?
I don't know what they're gonna do. We're kind of breaking the ice on it as high school, and they're all able to. And so we'll see in the next month what they decide to do, but.
Just as a consortium, we've had low premiums because of, a bigger employee base.
Yeah, it's more buying power though per se than it is actual like losses, because the losses aren't shared at this point. Like if, the North Lakeland's losses or AVW's losses don't directly impact us. Yes, they can via the overall buying power and stuff, but it's not, they're all functioning separately, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There are some outfits that function together. You probably know that, selling insurance, but we are not functioning together. We are doing buying power.
Self-funding dental is just flat out correct.
So, and again, you can always go back. It's not like you can never go back, but I definitely think it's worth giving a shot to. And the risk is low, and the payments are easy, and it still maintains all security. So let's see how it goes.
Okay, any other questions relative to dental? All right, it's a long motion, so please bear with me. A motion to approve the dental following effective for the 25-26 fiscal year. 1, move LUHS to a self-funded dental plan with 0% change in premium. 2, use Delta Dental as the TPA for all related service processing. 3, maintain staff contribution rates at 10% of the premium for each respective plan for all eligible employee types. And 4, create a monthly monitoring dashboard as part of the business manager's monthly report to show premium collection and claim payments.
I'll make that.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Woods? Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mrs. Fink?
Yes.
Mrs. Knoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Schuman? Yes. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes. Okay, health insurance.
Okay. All right, here we go. Yeah, so back to the HSA comment again, kind of updating you guys. I sent an update to all the staff the other day. We'll continue to kind of lose a little bit of ground from an actual coverage standpoint. They're still kind of messing around with eye vision checkups for kids under age 19. A little bit of breast cancer limitations in terms of like how the annual exams are going. And again, every year there's just kind of some of these little things that we pick and poke at to kind of reduce the coverage, and they will tell us that they are doing it to keep costs down. So, and that's been happening again in years where it's a 0%. So again, yes, the percentage is a 0. The coverage is changing though. And so as we go down this path with Sanford Health acquiring Marshfield, that also will be interesting to kind of see what they decide to do, because not only did they buy Marshall Clinic, they also bought Security Health. And so I have no doubt changes will be made. It's just a question of where, how, and what that's going to look like and to what extent. So I do think it was worth talking about. They did a full-on bid this year. We did not get a bid from Aspirus. We were turned down. And as you look at the future of what healthcare looks like, I don't know that you're going to have a choice to do anything other than self-fund. And it's going to come forth at some point. There's good to that. There's scary to that. There's, things that are indifferent to that. There's just a whole variety of things. That'll definitely be a bigger consortium discussion, most likely. But again, you'll need 5 boards that want to play in the sandbox on that, because there is some risk, and it does have strategy and things like that that you want to all get your heads together and really think about how you're aligning incentives for human behavior. And we'll just leave it at that for tonight. But in short, we're recommending fully insured, 4% increase, and that's what's on the docket for tonight. Same coverage, same plan, still 10% and 0% for the employee contributions. And that Simply One plan does continue to grow, which is good. That helps reduce premium costs overall and funnel more care through Marshall Clinic, which again lowers those costs, at least to the extent that we can see. We're not self-funded, so I don't get to see the cost of the doctor and all that. They withhold that information. That's part of being fully insured. But again, if you're paying yourself to do the work, the rate at which you choose to pay yourself for different operations can do some of this, and there's a little bit of smoke and mirrors. So again, we'll kind of break the ice with dental, survive that, and then we'll be talking about self-funded, I would imagine, in the years to come. I think there was a rate cap. I forget what they are, but they're not great. There was nothing that I'm like, oh yeah, no, we're for sure good there. It wasn't jump up and down for. So
Was it like a 9% rate cap or 10 for a year or two?
I think it was. It was 9 to 12, wasn't it? We even went to a third year, but like again, it was. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't. Either way, the rate caps were just nothing flashy. It wasn't like oh yeah, we got to do this because that cap is so good. Or at least that wasn't my motivating factor. So.
You guys have a distorted view of health insurance increases.
We do. We truly do. And I go to the business manager meetings every year this time of year. The numbers I hear on the table are consistently 7 to, the high teens. And it is just not uncommon. And so again, when you're looking kind of just, again, back to the HSA conversation, as you look at it over time and you don't change those values, but we're getting zeros, but people are making care choices. Like our staff are making decisions, for example, to try to see who can do an eye exam at a lower cost because they're paying for it now. Like it's coming out of their pocketbook. A family of 4, they're somewhere between $150 and $175 on average. So you're looking at every bit of $600 to $700 that now is rolling out of that HSA account if they choose to do it. On the other hand, they're foregoing the care if they choose not to. And everybody makes their own decisions. We don't see what that is. I couldn't tell you who stopped getting eye exams. That's PII, so to speak. But I don't know what to say other than it's not just a straight up zero and nothing's changing. So.
Okay, very good. I need a motion to approve the following health effective for the 25-26 fiscal year. One security health plan as the insurance carrier for Lakeland Union High School for 26, and to include 2 plan offerings in the form of broad and narrow network, and 2 broad network plan will have a 10% employee contribution, and the narrow network will have a 0% employee contribution for all eligible employee groups.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Boards?
Aye.
Mr. Cobb?
Yes.
Mrs. Fink? Yes. Mrs. Knowles? Mrs. Schubert? Yes. Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Peck?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next is life and short-term and long-term disability.
Okay, so like I said, folks at M3 do a really nice job for us. And I think at the end of the day, it's not here and there you got to kind of look around and see what else is out there. It's healthy. It's part of just good practice. A couple of the elementary schools already work with them. In short, what I did was basically have this individual from NIS mock up our policy on their book of business. I can assure you of 2 things. 1, we did the best we could. 2, no 2 plans are perfectly identical. So I have no way to tell you that they are 100% perfect the same. However, I think if you looked at the sheet, hopefully you can kind of see M3 was even gracious enough, even knowing that they were probably going to lose the book of business, to go through and make this document because they've done it with a couple of their other clients, and I think the standard is starting to know that, and so there may be some more either policy changes to the standard to make them more competitive, or they're just going to start to cave on some of the policy pieces so they are competitive. But again, basically, when you look through this, you can see that they do a really nice job helping us out to make an informed decision. They look at the definitions of disability. They look at all of these key pieces that influence when, how, and why people are paid in the event of injury or death. And they laid it out here pretty good. So at the end of the day, M3 says, yep, they use total disability at NIS, and the standard uses total or partial. So I gotta have a conversation with them and say, hey, will you guys match this? And at the end of the day, I made notes on there so that you guys can see that, but I didn't want to have to make M3 go back through and further, go through that process, because they're probably going to lose the book of business. So I just made hand notes, but again, you can see the notes that I made. One of the biggest benefits to switching was actually that if someone does go on LTE, they index it with CPI, and it does grow, where the standard does not. So if you get injured in 2025, that pay at that time is what is set in stone. And if you're a younger person, you get injured, you can't work for the next 30 years, like that makes a big difference. Does that make sense? So I think that when you look at, again, there will be some differences. That was one of the differences where it's a big win, and I think that that's value added. But did anybody have questions on some of the differences and the details? Other than that, it's largely the same policy, and we're going to pick up 14 or 15 grand and get a lot of the same coverage. Nobody's going to know the difference. Yeah.
Okay, I need a motion to approve the life, short-term, long-term disability effective for the 25-26 fiscal year. 1, move UHS insurance coverage. 2, Madison National as a new carrier for life, short-term disability, and long-term. 2, use National Insurance Services as a brokerage for life, short-term, long-term lines of coverage. And 3, continue with the zero contribution rate for all eligible employees.
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Schaub?
Yes.
Mrs. Fink? Yes. Mrs. Knoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Schuman? Yes. Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Peck?
Yes.
Mr. Ward? Mr. Owen?
Yes.
And just to clarify, you guys just did this, right? We were talking about this before. You just set all those rates. Just as you're connecting the dots on what's happening as you do those approvals, that's where they live for a year till we talk about it again.
So, but that does not include the $100 increase to HSA?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, this is just contribution percentages that are happening via payroll.
Okay, very good. Review and approve the bus contract.
Long story. Your questions, it's roughly a 4% per year increase over the course of a 5-year contract. We started this conversation late September.
Something like that, maybe in October already. It's close, it's somewhere around there.
And we've been going back and forth, and I don't know how many different drafts and different meetings with the consortium. Went up to bid. Didn't get the bids we wanted.
No.
Besides local.
Well, we got two. We had two bids, and essentially it would be $600,000 more over the course of 5 years across 5 districts. The rate amount would vary depending on the routes that district ran. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it wasn't like 600 divided by 5, but at the end of the day, there was the contract was more than thoroughly reviewed, and there were things that it would be nice to do. We even proposed a version that said we would acquire the property because not owning the property is a huge inhibitor to getting other people to bid on it. We probably had, there had to be a dozen, almost, maybe 10 or a dozen companies when we originally had our bid meeting, and we ended up with 2 bids. And again, you had
at least 4 or 5 others came out and started looking
for sure
at property.
They're serious about it.
Right?
Yeah.
And just never bid after that.
So at some point, if you truly want to bid, you have to acquire either that property or some other property and retrofit it so that you can get a very, I should say, competitive bid. Because
districts would own the property with the garage. Because then you take that area off.
But they rejected that piece, so it's not in the agreement.
And normally, bus contracts are 2 years long with most districts. We did a 5 years ago. Is there an advantage doing 4% over 5 years, so they can't go over 4%?
They're locked in for rates.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's not all that bad.
There's a lot of districts doing, I would say, between 3 and 5. You know, if you got a 2-year or 1-year bus contract, you're on the verge of getting rid of your bus company, is more my understanding.
Yeah, when I researched it, that most schools in the state had a 2-year contract for bus contracts.
Most of them.
But that was 5 years ago.
Yeah, they're now starting to go 5 to 7 year rolling. Where from the time you end the contract, 5 more years. Just because, number one, new bus is $120,000. And if they ever put in that law, then we're required to use sequencing.
We offered 7 as an option just because of the sheer upfront cost of the property acquisition. If you're an outside company trying to come in, you know what I mean, you need that time to make that money back. So I would say the biggest outcome was after Steve and I and Jim Ellis went there in October, we've gotten activity buses filled pretty much since then, I think, unless from what I'm hearing, like that's what Emily and Stacy are saying. So
Okay.
we may have said, imagine if there was a different sign outside and you still work here, but like that was the, I don't know, that was probably.
Things got a lot better after that.
It did. There was some change. So we'll see if that continues to go. You guys obviously had heard enough concerns from Bob. I've heard concerns from all 4 superintendents the last, 2.5 years or whatever. So hopefully they keep up the momentum and the work, and that's it.
Anybody else? Thank you. Motion to approve the bus contract with Lakeland Area Bus Service for the term of July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2030. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Fink? Yes. Mrs. Knoll? Yes. Mrs. Newman? Yes. Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Peck?
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz?
Aye.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes. Okay, I need a motion then to go into closed session to discuss specific personnel, to discuss pending litigation, and district administrator evaluation. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay, that ends our meeting, and we will be in closed. We have 5 minutes on time. Thank you.
Barb?
Did we finish comp?
No.
No, do you No, it was on the agenda tonight.
And then she played 3 more games.
Oh, it was just for discussion.
Yeah.
When can you do it?
And I'm like, whenever the careful kid just sit out, I sprained it.
I can't, I'm sorry.
He said, so I think it's weak, and it doesn't get stronger.
I'm into alter your foot growth too.
I told her, she needs to get better shoes. That don't look pretty. That you want to some
Just life as a kid, that was crazy.
All right, so